people be able to hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so mine, your P's and Q's.
So I'll be behaved.
You always got
That's right. We don't want to be following you down the steps with the camera. I mean, I can't, that was before me, but I vaguely remember what happened in the parking lot incident. There was an altercation.
Yeah.
Just getting set up, guys, here. So let's. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe.
Okay, so
There we go.
Yeah, I won't do it. I'm gonna go to my office. I got some work to do. See you guys.
Or do you want to sit in
Good
this
luck
so
with
you
your-
can see the comments? Because I'm gonna put it more towards them, so it's not like. Although, hold up.
is it just us?
Yeah.
Just us.
Not Santiago? Well, dude, if I would have been later, it would have been your show. Because
All right.
I was
Take a
running
pass.
like
Yeah, if you could sit here so that you have a clearer shot.
over my service on my car.
Oh,
And it's
man.
flashing.
Mine
So
is too.
tomorrow
I know.
it's going in. I'm like, I don't care. I
I
have
have
to.
waters if anybody needs any. Are you okay?
Awesome.
Waters if
Good
anybody needs any.
You know, that's my biggest fear, to hit one of these and go sliding.
So just obviously this is gonna be a very informal.
Watch out the door just color.
I don't know how hot it might get. Let me
Make it fine.
check this.
Take the jacket off.
So.
Twilight Zone.
So say hi.
We're in this computer's office.
I feel like I'm gonna sneeze.
Looks like
Stand by.
got a couple people logging in now. So
Hello, Deltona.
That's right. That's right. Hello.
like I said, very informal. Obviously a debate because we're gonna be obviously going back and forth with things, you know. But there's only gonna be a couple questions. The rest is just gonna be like dialogue and talking and working through whatever these topics are. And it'll be 2 minutes for questions.
Ready
So
the timer?
yeah, she's gonna keep track and just, you know, I'll give you the 3 when you're at 30 seconds, you know, to kind of let you know you've got a heads up.
So you want me to do a stopwatch or the timer?
Either one really works. Whatever is easiest for you to kind of keep track
I
on.
put the timer. It's gonna.
So looks like we've got more people joining in. We're doing good there. I'll go ahead and give the little intro. First and foremost, I want to say thank you both for being here and taking the time out to be here. I know you both had to try to squeeze in, rearrange meetings, rearrange clients, the whole 9 yards to get here. And so I give both of you the utmost respect for that because I know I'm a nobody, right? I mean, I have no political backgrounds. I have no people that can bolster behind me, nothing like that. So that alone tells me, you know, that you're committed to at least keeping that dialogue open one way or the other. Because really, I am just a constituent. I mean, I'm an active one, but really that I have nothing that breaks me apart from anybody else. Also, big shout out to all those watching at home or wherever you are, live stream, taking the time out of your night to join us. Learn more about your choices for mayor and obviously a not so typical fashion. Tonight, like I said, I did, right?
Oh, look, you had me over here. I'm done.
It's definitely going to be not typical fashion. I want this just to be very real and very you
Paper,
guys.
scissors.
Oh, I suck at that.
Me too. I suck at it too.
So it's going to be a lot of conversation. We may get out early. We may not. You know, we may get out at 9. Just kind of see how it goes. With that said, as I did before, I do want to acknowledge that as an incumbent, Heidi, you do have a bit rougher time in a lot of these like debates or Q&As because you have a history there.
Right.
You have a record. You have knowledge of how the city's ins and outs go. So I always like to point that out that, you know, some things may seem harder, but that's because you're an incumbent and that's just kind of what comes with it. I guess the old saying goes, you know, best predictor of the future is the past. So, you know, that makes it hard for anybody who's already been running or who's already been in the government to run again. So
Indeed.
I just always like to put that out there, make sure that that's, you know, understood. And with that, I want to start off the conversation with giving you each 2 minutes to explain to me why I should vote for you. So I actually had a little thing here. Okay. All right. And so I'll give you guys just a quick second to think on that while I make this completely fair and square.
You
I
were
wanted
wrong.
to do this in front of everybody, you know, so we have T for Troy and H for Heidi. And we're very informal here, guys, so I hope you guys don't mind Troy and Heidi, you know, obviously I'm just
Doesn't
Brandy,
matter.
so one letter on each name and we'll see who goes first. Yeah. All right, Heidi, you're up.
Okay, so I have 2 minutes to let you know why you should vote for me.
Yes.
Awesome.
Because as obviously a constituent, you know, go ahead and do your thing. As a constituent, that's something obviously any voter's going to ask. So, you know, but me specifically, I vote for mayor too. So my first question was like, why do they feel I should vote for them? So I thought that was a perfect, legit question to start off with, and we'll go.
Absolutely. So, I've lived in Deltona for 35 years, most of my adult life, and basically I've watched the city grow. When I came here, I've always worked outside of the city, just a background due to the fact that my family purchased a business in Ormond Beach when we first moved down here. I work on commission, so my money's over there realistically, right? If I don't do that, I go back to zero. So, you know, that's my background. So why do I keep coming back to Deltona? I come back to Deltona because after the 35 years of living here, I've seen it grow from a small town where I had pretty much no houses on my street. I've seen people come, I've seen a 10-year fight for incorporation. I've seen the basic referendum for our own police department. Before I got elected, we had a referendum for our own police department, and that failed. And I was on the pro side at that time for getting our own police department. And then by fluke, I got asked to run for a city commission seat. It wasn't because I was upset with anything or I wanted to be a politician. I just got asked to do that when I came to City Hall at one point to speak about Thornby. And at the time, the city was considering doing a partnership, I don't think it was Echo, but maybe it was, one of the partnerships where they were going to purchase Thornby with the county. And I used to go down there every night and I would see the wildlife and everything. And it was a strong, strong feeling for me, just like you guys have a strong feeling for why everybody wants to run and why you want to affect change. And so that's why I got into it. Now I've been a commissioner for 8 years and I've learned the workings of the city, good, bad, ugly, everything. And I feel confident in Deltona. I want to keep moving the city forward in the direction that we're going. We need infrastructure. We need to bring the city together. We need much better communication. I work in a field where I communicate, and you guys are right. The communication is bad. It's antiquated. So I want to still continue to be a part of my city and watch it continue to grow from the little town it was to the bigger city that it is now.
All right, thank you. And Troy?
So I didn't decide to run until April, so I'm really late in the game. And what made me decide to run is I've been in Deltona and I see this conflict of the city versus the people, and it's been that way since I've been here for a few years. And when I talk to people, I realize that conflict has been here for decades. Apparently, it's not a new thing. A lot of the problems that we face, the water issues, all the issues that my neighbors have, the trash issues, these things have been around for quite a long time, many years. And when I look at a city and I say, okay, well, these problems have been through many commissions. They've been here for longer than 8 years, longer than 16 years. We need to change. And so I decided that, you know, I have an opportunity in my life. I work from home, so I've got, you know, a little bit of extra time to deal with some issues. And I like to talk to people and understand like what their concerns are. And I decided, you know what, I think, you know, I didn't plan on running. I said I got to Deltona. I had no interest in being in politics. I started going to all the commission meetings. I was there almost every week just because I wanted to know what's happening in the town I've chosen for my home. You know, I bought a home here, and I want to make sure that whatever happens, you know, if I want to retire here, that the city maintains a good positive outcome and gets to be something that grows in a positive way. We get better services. We have better people that work through the city government. And so I said, you know, if the problems have been there for long before this last couple of years or last 8 years, there needs to be a fundamental change, and we don't get fundamental change unless we get different people in there. So I thought I'm going to give it a shot this time and see what I can offer. I've got a background in working with diverse people. You know, as a band director, we had to deal with the city. We had to deal with the people. The students had goals. The teachers had goals. The parents had goals. We all had different goals, and it was only through like the ability to kind of work together and bring everyone together to get to a common goal that I was able to succeed as a teacher in general. So I know I can bring that to this government and hopefully bring people back together and push the city forward in a more positive direction.
All right, thank you. So I understand like the reasons obviously why you guys want to be mayor. So let's get into some of the top issues. What I decided to do was instead of ask a bunch of questions, we already did a Q&A. I went through the debate last night, the Q&A, and I pulled some of the top issues and I kind of grouped them together for like 30-minute discussion. And thank you. And so the first one obviously that came up in both of what you guys said: communication, trust, transparency. So that's what I want to talk about for like about 30 minutes, just to kind of nail down what our problems are and what we're going to do about them. So obviously for 2 minutes each, let's see who's going to go first.
Sounds so high tech.
I'm telling you, it is Troy.
You know, we need to keep track of how
How
accurate
many?
that is if it's 50-50, right?
All right, we got one. Like I said, this
one
is
and one.
very, very informal, guys, and this is what I want you guys to see is who they are as people. And so the 2-minute question is, what is your, okay, so we understand what everybody's outlook is. Okay, I've heard that in all the debates. I've heard that, but I want to know about plans. Like, what do you, when you get in there as mayor, what is the plan? Like, everybody needs to go in there with an idea of how the workings are. You can't go in there promising things that you actually can't do. That's the worst thing about politicians. They don't study first on what they actually have the capacities to do. So we're going to take it like this. We all know it takes a consensus on the commission to do anything. So my first question would be, if you have an issue that you feel passionate about, or your district, you know, for those who, you know, are commissioners, if there is an issue that you see people coming forward with and wanting to talk about, and you want it, let's say, placed on the agenda or to be discussed in any length, how are you going to go about talking to your other commissioners or convincing them, if that's the word that needs to be used, or what, like, how do you plan on working with the others to say, we all need a voice here, and, you know, this needs to be discussed or put on the ballot? So that's like my very first question. That comes with like communication and things like that. Is we see it all the time. If one person wants to talk about something and they don't have the backing of the rest, it doesn't get discussed. And in my eyes, I feel that limits that district's voice, because it's usually just a commissioner that brings it up, not so much a mayor. But if a commissioner is to bring up, listen, in my district, we're having this problem, I want to discuss it, and they don't have the support, currently it doesn't get talked about or get put on. So that is something that I have an issue with personally. And so obviously, since I'm running the debate, that's going to be something I want to talk about. So 2 minutes, I just need to kind of know, how do you plan on getting your voice heard? Obviously, it's a little easier as the mayor because you run the show up there on the dais. But to be fair, across the board, a mayor just can't put it out there to speak either. He's got to have, or she's got to have, the full commission support, because what most people probably don't realize, and we could put this out there now, is the mayor is nothing but a commissioner who has the authority to rule the meetings. So it's very important. There's a lot of controversy about that. A lot of people don't understand that that's how it works. Exactly. But you are just a mayor, you know, you're a commissioner at large. You represent all the people.
Exactly.
So how are you going to get, let's say, your voice heard, or let's say if you are a commissioner and you don't have the backing, what would you do, or what would you say or work on? Would you, you know, stand strong? Those kind of things is kind of what I want to know in about 2 minutes. Troy, you're up.
Okay, so, you know, definitely like you mentioned, you know, we're all just part of a team that we have to work together. And I think there's a couple of things that we could do a little bit differently maybe. And one of those is if a commissioner has a topic on that they want to bring up, I don't know that there needs to be a barrier for that commissioner to bring things up. There needs to be limits, there needs to be structure, obviously, because these meetings can easily get out of hand. But I think as a courtesy to all the commissioners on the board, they should have the opportunity. Maybe we have a structure that says, you know, every commissioner has to have one topic, you know, just because they want it on there, they get it put on there, to kind of have control over that agenda. And I would like to extend that also just to the people. You know, if there are people that are begging for a topic to be on agenda that their commissioner, for whatever reason, is not bringing that topic forward, I think that people should also have the opportunity to petition to put something on the agenda, and it shouldn't be a hard thing to do. We have to put, restrictions in place, obviously, because you can't have people bringing up the same topic every week and getting it voted down and keep bringing it up because that doesn't really move anything forward. But I think I always talk about data, and I know data is a really boring thing. My life is all boring. I'm a very boring person. But the thing about data is, if we all start from the same place, if we all start from what I call the same operational definition, if I can come to the commission and say, I've got this thing I want to talk about, I have to build the backstory with that data, with that information.
Absolutely.
I have to be able to say, this is why I want it on the agenda. This is what I think about it. This is why I think it's important. This is how many people have talked to me about it. If I can bring all of that data together and present a story, I don't know that there would be a reason for any commissioner to say, no, you can't have that on the agenda. If you just start from the same place of here's where we want to start from, and having an opportunity to put it on the agenda is going to be something that we can all share together. We can all have a conversation about. But we also have to, like I said, respect that if you bring a topic up and it's getting voted down, you can't just keep bringing it up. We have to understand that we are a body, and you may feel really strongly about it, but you can't bring it up again unless there are more data points or a new story to tell with it.
Thank you. And I'm going to give you a extra time. Heidi?
Okay, so right now we added something to the agenda, which is commission special reports and requests. That was not on there before. And so we added that onto the agenda so that something can be brought up. If you have a request to talk about something, because Florida has a very strict sunshine law, that's something else that people need to understand. We cannot talk about things that we are going to vote on or could possibly vote on in the future. You're not allowed to have a conversation outside of a public hearing. If I want to talk to a commissioner and say, I really hope that the weather holds out, that's one thing. But you can't be talking about things that even you feel strongly about that you want to bring up. You can't say, hey, let me run that by you. That's not allowed. So anything that you do, you have to do in a public forum, whether that be a workshop or whether that be a commission meeting. Those are basically the only two public forums you have to bring something forward. Obviously, the sunshine law does not apply to constituents. It doesn't. And there have been many times where constituents have brought something forward to me, and I've said, that's a great idea. In order to get traction, 4 out of the 7 have to agree to it in order to really get some traction. So as a resident, you have several options. My option is always, or my thing to tell the residents is always email the entire commission. Don't cherry pick who you want to send that to. You need to copy the entire commission, copy the manager, copy the attorney on there if you want, and then come to a commission meeting. And come to a commission meeting and plead your case in your 4 minutes. Because if you do that and you back that up, you have a much better chance of, and the more clear you make your case, the more chances there is of, as someone looking at it, including staff. Because the reality is, like you said, we're 7. The mayor is a glorified commissioner. The at-large has the power to run the meeting. That is basically it, and has the power to sign legal documents as the mayor. That's the difference. But however, as a mayor, you're also a leader. And how you run the meeting and how you deal with your fellow commissioners and how you deal with the residents sets the tone for what comes back to you. How you shout into the woods is how it comes back to you as an echo. So you have to have a way to talk to residents and talk to your fellow commissioners that's non-confrontational and that's consensus building. That's my goal. Because if you don't, you're going to just constantly have agitation in some form or another. And that's not right. And as for me, as being on there 8 years, trust me, I've had my share of no seconding something. I've had my share of bringing things forward where the commissioner says, we don't want to support that, numerous times. And there are times you bring something up and it might be an emotional issue. And maybe you didn't do your background and you just get up there and say this, this, and this. I try, and I've learned over time, to research everything. What I do, and I agree with you on the data, I research. I go ahead and I contact staff, because as much as we want to think as elected officials, none of us have really a true background on how an entire city works and how every department works and what you need to make an educated, proper decision that you can realistically deal with. So
you mentioned, though, the 4 out of 7.
Yes.
So last year, I think it was, anybody could bring up to the manager that they wanted something. That was something that was changed, because I remember that change where it had to be a consensus now to direct the manager to do something, or the city attorney to do something.
But you can bring anything up. I can bring up that I would like to have all the park benches painted hot pink in honor of breast cancer. But if the rest of the commission says no, that's too much money.
Right. So how do each of you feel about that new change of having a consensus for anything to even go forward? Because the reason I ask is obviously if you have clicks up there, and I talk about clicks a lot, not just currently, past clicks, future clicks. It's good that everybody wants to work together. It's a necessity. But when you get that build where an outsider's not going to get anything in, there's where my concern lies. So is that a change that you would consider making, or at least revisiting the process and how each elected official can move past the needing the approval of all? Because if it's something in their let me give you an example. If there's something in my district 1, and what's over by Providence, is that 3?
It's either 4
3
or
or 4?
3, depending on.
I don't know how to. Okay. Depending on
Next caller, please.
those right.
Those is calling.
They're calling in. Yes, we have people calling in.
It's the secret line.
Those two districts. Those two districts do not. Did I not do that right?
We answered it.
Okay, well.
Hello?
No, maybe gone. Is anyone there? Okay. I think it's bye-bye now, but it was on.
Okay, that was weird.
Last
Malfunction,
night was your
people,
light,
malfunction.
today it's this, there's something. Just
Yeah.
Zapped.
They're tapping into us. But so obviously District 1 and let's say District 4 are going to have different needs. There are going to be little things that just, they have different needs or even concerns. You may have a lot more active people in one district than another, the whole 9 yards. So what I noticed in my 2 years of watching is, sure, anybody could bring anything up, but it seemed that, and like I said, I'm going to say seemed because I'm not up there, but it seemed that when that change took place, things that are policy and procedure weren't even being moved forward on. And I can explain what I mean by that because it kind of goes into our transparency and trust conversation. So I'm going to use the example of Sugo. I know he was very controversial and everything. He was actually my biggest critic in the beginning. He became my biggest advocate at the end. My concern was sitting there, watch him trying to enforce a policy and procedure and was being shut down, and that is the fraud policy. I went to him when I felt I had emailed every elected official. I had emailed the city manager. I had emailed our attorney. I had emailed the mayor, and all individually so that there was no issues there. I learned that too the hard way. I originally was told to just hit commissioners at all, and then I was told don't do that because people won't respond. So I even did it individually, and I said, listen, let's put this to bed, get it out the door. We have a fraud policy. I want you to enact that fraud policy and just follow the policy. That is part of being a commissioner, is to set policy and procedures and follow policy and procedures. So I was very shocked sitting in that audience that day when it was brought up that there are things we need to investigate that we're not investigating, and he flat out said, I'm being shut down from enacting this policy. Like, nobody is moving forward on it, even though the policy is very clear. Anybody who says any type of concern has to be taken seriously, and you have to start a proper investigation. And then it actually goes into detail of how to start the investigation. You can do it through this person if this person isn't involved. You can do it. I mean, it's a very broken down policy. And when he said that he was blocked, that's concerning to me. So what would you guys do as a mayor to ensure that things like policy and procedure are followed, and there is no way to block enacting a policy and procedure? Because to me, I don't understand how that can even happen. I'm not sure it can happen. It's a policy and a procedure. So let's see our lucky little shake up here. Heidi, you're up.
See, oh, we're good, eh? Okay, so first of all,
I know that was a lot, but
no, I totally understand. So first of all, my goal should I become in as mayor? My first thing that I would do, there's two things that I would do. First of all, the first thing I would do is hold a retreat, and I would obviously going to be open and everything else, and I would encourage prior to doing that, each commissioner to go ahead and going back to your previous question about issues and things that they want, and go ahead and do something like that where everyone can bring forth and has equal time and isn't shut down, isn't told determine the parameters beforehand. Everyone can talk about and bring forth what they want. I think you need to revisit that every 6 months. And I think that everybody needs to have a voice, because you're absolutely right. Not every commission district has the same issues. Commission District 1 out by Mitch right now has a lot of water. You have a lot of standing water out there, and residents have been doing that. District 3, the district I represent, continually has a lot of blight. It has a lot of garbage being dumped out. It has a lot of people moving in and out all the time. And so each district, District 2, I think you're in that, right, Troy? You don't maybe have issues up there. You don't have a lot of that as some of the older districts do. Right. So you have to really revisit those things and let every commissioner, because they do represent their district, they have to have that. And second of all, with policies and procedures, my goal, what I would like to do is do, again, a complete workshop, not 2 hours where we say we're done, we're out, let's cut it off, let's revisit it in 2 weeks. It drives me crazy, because you lose momentum when you do things like that. You have to take like an entire half a day or a day, and you have to say, we're going to go through this. This is a policy and a procedure. This is what we're going to either agree with or we're not, and we're going to follow it. But you have to have the proper steps, and you have to carry it out, because it's not right not to do that. And if the policy or procedure is antiquated, then you rewrite it, you do it legally, through legal, and go ahead and set that up. Because not following and not going the proper steps in any way, shape, or form. Am I good?
Yeah, go
ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, you can finish that sentence.
Okay, in any way, shape, or form doesn't do anybody any good. It's not the proper way to do it. And you can't have one decision for you and another way for you. And unfortunately, in a lot of departments, it's been that way.
And so that's something you would change?
It drives me crazy, yes.
So I think when we talk about a commissioner who is trying to bring something up and isn't able to for any reason, it's really easy, I think, for an elected body to form those cliques. And in order to kind of to stop that from happening or to prevent it from going further, you have to make a drastic change. And I think the only way we can do that is we have to understand that we set the methodology for our meetings. We're not required by law to follow Robert's rules. We have a modified version as it is of Robert's rules. We have the opportunity to set whatever we want to do in our meetings as a commission through our own document of policies and procedures. And I think we need to instigate probably a new section whereby a commissioner can call for a special vote that says, I have tried to bring this topic up and I'm constantly getting blocked. I need to call, and I don't know what to call it, but special vote for now. That would require every commissioner not just to say yes or no, but to say no because this, yes because this, so that we can get at least the public to be aware and informed that, okay, this commissioner wants the fraud policy enacted. It's not happening. These 7 commissioners over here are saying, no, I'm not enacting it because of this. And if we require that kind of accountability, I think we'll get at least a more open and honest discussion at some point. And if I could, I'd like to kind of ask Heidi a question in one way.
It's a debate. Go for it.
And just in a very, I'm not trying to be, attacking in any way, of course, but what has stopped you in the last 8 years from enacting those changes you just mentioned? Like, what is it that you found as a commissioner maybe that's blocking you?
No consensus. And Troy, you just said something about, having a special vote. We have also had the contentious issues where if it's not on the agenda, there's a big, there's a disparity in what people say. If it's not on the agenda, the public doesn't know about it, and it's not fair to bring something up without having proper public notice. You have the other side of the coin that legally you can do something like that. It's not prevented, but there have been, for the 8 years that I've been on, it's been this way, it's been this way.
I mean, obviously you don't take a vote if it hasn't been, but you should be able to bring it up and discuss it.
Yes, you can, but if you're saying to do a special vote if somebody wants to bring something up and it's not agenda'd, you have that whole gray area where people are going to say they did something, they voted on something, and it could be meaningful down the road. We're not talking about something where it says, okay, we have a dry season and tonight, because this and this is going on, we have to now enact a burn ban. That's something that's really serious that you have to do, and people understand that. But anything else, I mean, it's a great idea, but then you're going to have those people say, Unless you choose to do it at a workshop where there's no binding vote taken, where you don't take action, you can do that, because I agree that people should explain why they don't want something. If you want something, why? I don't see a need for it. Why don't you see a need for it? Is that not a problem in your district? An explanation would be good.
Well, I think because, and that goes to what I was trying to talk about is the kind of special vote I'm talking about would be no binding action, like you talk about, like the workshops we're having. I'm talking about a vote that just says why you don't want this topic on the agenda. So it's not like that vote would not be an unfair to the public vote, because it's not going to require any action on anyone.
And that's as long as that would
be the difference.
Yeah, because I do agree. And at the end of the meeting, like you mentioned, at the end of the meetings, you can now bring up, you have that section for commissioner special reports and comments and such, and you can certainly bring up things. And of course, it's not fair to bring up an actionable vote, there to kind of like, waylay the rest of the commission, obviously. But we can certainly, I think, talk about topics again that are non-binding is a good way of putting that. So that you don't have that action being taken without representation, without opportunity for public debate, but just to enact something on the next meeting, just to say, okay, well, you're not putting this on, or we are putting this on the agenda in the next meeting, so that time frame can be restarted for sure.
So I noticed on your signs it talks about inform, include, and inspire.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little idea?
What
does that mean for us?
So, we all want to find that perfect buzzword, right, to put on your signs. It's all about the gimmicks, and sometimes. But I gotta say, like, to me, it really isn't just a catchphrase or a gimmick. My life, again, I'm an educator at heart. I still work in the education field to a large degree, and data is all about information is critical to how I live my life and how I believe we have to work together with data. Again, if you work from a different data set than I do, we're never going to be able to come together. It's always going to be a fight. If we combine our data sets and we talk about, okay, what's the similarity, what are the differences, and which one is perhaps more accurate than the other one, then we can move forward. So informing people has got to be key number one. And I would say how that relates to the commission is I really want to see, and I see a little bit of it sometimes, but on the agenda, every agenda item should have a complete background for the people. Because I think there's a lot of like documentation happening in the background, but I come to these meetings and I see these topics, and a lot of times I don't know where it came from. I don't understand why it's on the agenda, and it's really hard to kind of follow some of those things because I know there's documentation that's probably given out to other people in the commission, or the managers talk to people about things. So I want to have that background be given to everyone. The inclusion thing is just, we have to include everybody. We can't dismiss anyone. We've got a small number of people who are consistently attending meetings and being very vocal about their displeasure with things in the city. And we can't just dismiss them because we don't agree with them or because we feel they're too small of a number. We have to include them. And just by including those people, you get to have that dialogue that will be a huge step forward into resolving those issues. If you just ignore it and dismiss it, they will most likely get louder, and it's going to cause more disruption, and it's going to get in the way. And then the inspire thing is, it's not so much me wanting to inspire people. I mean, I hope that my doing this whole campaign thing, as a complete, I've never been involved in a city government before. It's very new to me. I think everyone has, even Heidi, in the first year, you didn't have any background, right?
Nothing.
So it's very common for people to kind of get involved from nowhere.
Yep.
And I want to hopefully inspire other people to get involved. But I also find myself being constantly inspired by people around me. And I just want to hold on to that kind of feeling it's that we're not alone. It's going to be very important to inspire each other in a way. And I think if we work from the idea that we want to help each other, inspire our community, inspire ourselves and our neighbors, we're going to have a much happier kind of approach to things that's going to be more productive.
So that makes sense. You brought up dialogue. So obviously I want to talk about, do either of you feel that a change in how residents can come forward and talk, do you feel that opening up I understand operating rules and procedures, but as you said, maybe going through them and having a way that we can do constructive dialogue versus saying we'll get back to you and then never get back to you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I know we have to be kind of careful there because, that's opening up a whole shitstorm. I mean, we understand the house. I know how I can be sometimes. I'm just saying, okay? So I'm being realistic here. I don't want to sit here and fluff anybody.
Well, I think there's two quick
So,
things
obviously you have to kind of have a little bit of rein on it, but if it's something as simple as a question that can be answered by, let's say a staff member that's sitting there, I don't see why we can't say, hold on, let's get you that answer, or we'll call you back up, or...
Yeah, and I've seen a couple times the mayor or someone would say, hey, we have staff here, get with XYZ at the end of the meeting. I think that's a huge, that's a really good thing. But I think also, perhaps, at the meeting we've got 7 people came up and asked a question that we didn't have an answer for, because obviously you can't have all the data all the time. But when you say I'll get back to you, I think that the very first thing at the next meeting should be an agenda item that says, all questions asked last meeting and where we're at with that. So it's, it's constantly on the top of the agenda.
So that's kind of the idea that.
But I think also, and you've mentioned this before, we need those town halls. When we talk about dialogue.
Somebody just brought up town halls would help.
Absolutely.
But those town halls I think have to be in each district, right? Because if you go out to the people and make it more convenient for them, and City Hall, I mean, when I first started going to those meetings, that room, that whole ambiance can be very intimidating. It can be very off-putting, right? And you get up there, and I get up with that meeting, I'm like, okay, I'm going to say something. Here we go. It's very nerve-wracking.
I remember my first time there.
And I remember mine. I was like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And I saw the things on the wall. I'm like, okay, it's memorized those because I'm going to use that now. Yeah, and it's like, and you get up there and you're staring at them, and you're like, and they're like looking, and then you say, and then for me, I was always worried about the time.
Yeah.
And see, my mistake, I'd been here practically my whole life, but I'd never come to a commission meeting. So my whole thought process when I decided to want to speak for the first time and even come to my first meeting was, I want to go in there professional. Mm-hmm. I want to go there and let them know I'm not just coming off with some one-off of, I want you to do this. I wanted it to be understood that I well thought out. I pulled records. I was very thorough in my research, and I came up with an answer and one that's viable. And so I wanted to pitch it because at that time, trash was the problem. We had enacted that ordinance. That's why I'm here, guys, trash.
I know.
Isn't everybody loving that? But anyhow, I would have been none the wiser had the trash not happened. And I
think a more informal dialogue opportunity, the workshops, and maybe just, get away from behind the dais and have a table set up and just break down those, the barriers, whether they're physical or whether they're emotional or whatever they are. If we can get rid of those and just have a conversation like this, if we did more of this type of conversation, I think we'd get a lot more.
Absolutely.
A lot more accomplished. Yeah. And that was my concern is here I prepared myself. I didn't educate myself on the 4 minutes thing. But I felt, well, if I'm explaining something and I'm, a couple seconds over, it's not going to be a big deal because I'm making a point and I'm getting to where I'm going with it. That wasn't the case, obviously. But I just felt that significant moment, because most people understand that trash ordinance never affected me. It never personally affected me. Had it went in the year before, it would have affected me because I had more people in my home. But at that moment, it didn't. But what I saw, because I was only on community pages at the time, was an outcry of Deltona residents on this community page, which is usually not mainly Deltona responding. They're outpour crying like, what do we do? We're dragging our nasty trash back in near our children's toys. Like, that was enough for me. And that's when I was like, I've got to figure this out. It's how my brain works. I'm a processor. I change things, redo whole departments at work. So I'm like, clearly I can fix this. This seems so simple. And what I found was very little changes actually took place. I thought I was going to see like this big spreadsheet of different changes, and it wasn't. It was all of maybe like 5 or 7 things.
Because it got whittled down. Initially it was this big thing, and then it was like, no.
And some of them were very simple. Mm-hmm. Bring your trash can a little closer to the road so the automated arm could take it. Like, that didn't hurt anybody. But what I did find was a couple sections that were changed that kind of hit each other in the head, and they were counterproductive to each other, in a section that created a revenue stream. So when I went in and I fixed all this and I came to present it, like I said, my first time, I came very well dressed. You probably remember I came with my roller bag.
Yep.
And I had a folder because I wanted to show, like, I'm not just some one-off, hey, I just think you should be able to change the world. I had a legit solution. And it really struck to me when I was shut down. It really did. And I'm just like, hold up. Like, I don't understand. I did get the 4 minutes thing finally. Like, I did understand that. But I also felt that if there was a little bit of change in rules, or maybe a little common sense leeway of saying she's not rambling, she's getting somewhere, she's got a solution, let's hear it out, we probably wouldn't be sitting here today. And so I think that's important, that we need to somehow better interact with those who take time out of their day to actually come, because we know it's not that many.
Right.
And so if somebody wants to take the time out, especially somebody who's not there constantly, blah, 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 like I am now, especially those type of people, if they're taking the time out to come, I'm sure it's for an important reason to at least them. And so I want to see that changed. I want to see that there is some more dialogue. And So one of the things you said last night, the debate comes into this because we talk about transparency and trust and communication. I don't want to touch on the audit. Obviously, that'll come at another point. But you brought up, the open communication needs to change. You had brought up that communication needs to come a little better. You talked about the open door policy. Everybody talked about that. But you had mentioned something about if you ask, you'll get answers. And so the only reason that stuck with me is because over 2 years, I have asked a lot of questions. And I know I have. I know I've asked an exorbitant amount of questions. But some of them would have never even had to be asked if my original questions were answered. And so I got a little offended on that answer because I'm just like, man, like I've asked many questions about many things, and I don't feel I did get answers. So I guess my question is like, is there a reason? Like, is it just, were my questions things that you couldn't touch base on? So that's what I wanted to ask you, because that really stuck to me in the debate last night. It's like, man, like I know I've asked a lot of questions and I don't remember answers. I mean, that's why I said if there are some, I'm not saying there wasn't, but I don't remember getting answers to a lot of specific questions. So, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you in terms of the transparency and communication.
Well, first, can I just take a quick step back to what we just
Absolutely.
talked about with the agenda and with dealing with people coming up there? Because I know from my own experience, it's very intimidating. I know when people that I know have gone up there to say something, they're like, well, what do I do? Well, you can, you know what I mean? You walk them through that. And then it is very intimidating. You have your 4 minutes and then people stare at you and that's it. I'm good. And so, that's a very intimidating thing. And then you don't get an answer and you feel like, all right, I just came here. Like you exactly said, Brandy, you prepare yourself, you come up there and you say something and then you don't get an answer. So what I would change just first off is, when you have a list of people up there and somebody comes up, now if somebody comes up and wants to say, we're having this wonderful festival and this and this, that's one thing. But if you're asking a question, what do I need and this, I would say how many more people are on the list? You have 5 more people that have filled out, plus a few more that want to speak. 5 times 4 is 20. You have 20 minutes. So staff, you have 20 minutes and you go ahead in those 20 minutes and get an answer for this person. And the thing is, if their computers aren't working down there, then we have a problem.
Right.
Okay, then we need to upgrade our IT and you should be able to sit just like I can on my phone and pull up and research something like you can on your iPad. They should be able to do that. And after that, we take a 5-minute, if it needs to be, take a 5-minute recess. If they say truly this is far more in depth than what we can give you an answer, because we don't want to give you an improper answer because that backfires on you as well.
Absolutely.
So then, you say, all right, 20 minutes, come back and give these people an answer. Don't just say, call tomorrow or this and that, because that, to me, again, you lose the momentum and you lose the interest of the people because they feel defeated. Mm-hmm. They feel like they've gone up there and they've not had a proper response, or maybe they're embarrassed to say something, or they felt like inadequate going up there. Because, I say that personally because I've had to go to other commission meetings. I went to Daytona Beach's commission meeting. They have 2.5 minutes. And I was up there pitching something. I don't even remember what it was. And I'm standing up there close and they're all around you. And you got the thing. And the minute, kids, your timer's done, you're off. You are off the air at those 2.5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So it's intimidating for someone that's even involved in it.
And I get that because I've been to the county council meeting once, and
that's very intimidating.
And I can see when some people would be intimidating. I'm not going to use the word intimidating just because I'm not a very intimidated person. But I could see how it could be, absolutely. And I know of people who have flat out said, I'm too intimidated to talk. And it's not a person intimidating, it's just the situation and the environment itself. But I think that's very important, especially when it comes to community, communication and trust, that changes. And I don't know where that lies. That's why I wanted to know y'all's ideas, because I don't know where that change lies, where we're not going to let it become a free bubble. We're going to get you those answers. So I appreciate those. That actually was some things that I didn't even think about maybe implementing or talking about implementing.
And one other comment: when other cities, when they have their agendas and they place their things online, they have you can go ahead and look, and they have an after action item. After action. So what it does is it tells you what happened there. The vote was, like, if you want to look up last week's agenda and you go on there, the vote was 5-2, blah, 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 blah. these people voted for it, these didn't. This was the after action agenda, and it clarifies what went on and who voted for what.
And we don't have that.
No, we don't.
We don't have much transparency at all. So I really want to touch base on that, because that's a huge thing with me, is the transparency.
But I think even more like on that same topic, there should be an opportunity, perhaps even before the meeting, when you have to submit your question request. If you submit that further in advance, there should be an opportunity for that to go to staff earlier, and you can get,
if you put the
give
question
them a
actually
warning,
on there.
if you know you can ask a question that's going to be in depth, give them as much time as they can to answer.
And to me, you can put a request online. Mm-hmm. All those requests online should be sent to those departments. Yep. It should be, and that's again where we are behind the times in being proactive with technology, with what we have and what we can use.
Have we pushed to change it?
Well,
what's been standing in the way, right?
Yes, it's when people don't want to do something. What I have learned over the last 8 years, and I'm going to lose, because let's be clear, I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus. I'm not throwing management, attorney,
that's not what
staff, my fellow commissioners, past commissioners. That's not what.
But facts are facts,
but facts are facts. I'm not naming names. I'm not saying anything, because that's just me. Okay, let's be clear on that. But when something is brought forward as an item to be changed, and somebody brings something forward, and people in general don't want to do that. It has always been, in my entire time, oh, well, there's going to be a cost to that. There's going to be a cost to that. Well, I've got a budget for that. That's going to cost a lot of money. And in the beginning, I was like, okay. And I've come to learn that it's going to cost a lot of money is code word for I don't want to do it. Or it's not going to, you know what I'm saying? It's too much for us to take on. Or it's, it's going to mean a lot of change that we don't want to deal with. And again, that's not specific to one department, one individual, one anything. It's a general observation that I personally have noticed. And I take that on myself, that's my personal observation.
And I think at that point, like, what's the opportunity to say, okay, great, it's going to cost a lot of money. I'm data guy. I want to know, give me the line items. What's going to cost a lot of money? Are we looking at one vendor? Have we looked at the other vendors? Have we looked at other opportunities? Like, at what point can you say to them, whoever them is in this case, I understand you think it's going to cost a little money. I need to see
prove it to me.
Right, prove it.
Prove it, but then you've got to have consensus for the commission to move that
and
forward.
That's why
and
I
change
said, are we going to change this? Because it seems like a rat race where we're chasing ourselves, and then they wonder why the city's not moving. Well, we're chasing ourselves. So my biggest thing, and like I said, obviously you both know I'm not going away anytime soon. I've made my home here. I went to elementary, middle school, high school here. Like, this is my home. So now that I can't unsee what I've seen, as much as I would love to, I'm going to stay involved. And the things that are being said during campaigns, not only from you, but from Santiago, from, all the districts, I'm going to hold some feet to the fire. And I don't want to. I want to see that these things that are being said are actually going to be enacted once they get in there. And I understand, like I said, it's going to be hard because you got to have a consensus, but that's one of the first things that I think, in my opinion, need to be hashed out. We have to fix the process and procedures, the meeting rules, whatever we have to fix to say we're going to be a little more inclusive and a little more open to other people's ideas and thoughts. I don't see that now.
You have to have, when you have something that you bring forward as an individual commissioner, and you go to talk to people and get your data, get your information, and staff can kill a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? They can just say, they can kill it. They can kill it not only for you, and when you bring a staff member up and they don't want to do it, I've seen it happen. I've seen over time good ideas be brought forward.
Could you not then direct the manager and say, what the hell, like, their staff were commissioned and this is what we want done?
But I'm one commissioner again. And if you have a staff member that's saying, well, that's not really feasible,
so I guess that goes back to my first question. How hard are y'all going to fight to say, I understand that you don't agree with me, but this needs to take place, or listen and hear me out?
Yep.
Because right now, everybody knows I got nicknames for some people up on the dais. My commissioner, I'm not afraid to say it, I call him the ostrich. He sticks his head in the sand and he wants to pretend there's nothing going on and everybody is just full of BS. And all I wanted from day one is for you to say, as my commissioner, I may not agree with you, but I am your voice, and you're asking me to look into something, and I'm actually going to give the effort to look into it. And if you find substance, fight like hell to get it heard. That's all. I mean, I don't think a lot of what a lot of residents are asking for is unreasonable. You're our voice. We don't have one, and clearly we don't at a meeting. And we can sit there all day long and spend 4 minutes, but really, what are we accomplishing?
Well, I think
we're not.
If we get to the point where
disagree
someone says, you know, come up and says, "Oh, that's going to cost too much," they just dismiss it. I think if that's your idea, then it's incumbent upon you at that point to do extra research. And I mean, I keep saying it. These positions, you know, they pay $13,000, $11,000 a year. They are at best part-time positions. That's the way our city is set up. So, and we cannot expect the people on this commission to spend 40 hours a week on this job for what they're getting in return, and get
what they are supposed to do is tell the manager to do it.
But if they're not willing to make those changes, if they're not willing to fight through it, because I know I think we are in a place right now where things have gotten really off kilter, and it's going to take I don't think the next commission, whoever's up there, is going to be very popular, because I see a lot of really hard choices coming down the road, and I think it's going to be very tough. But if I say I want a public records request system that does this, and this, and I get that costs too much money, I need to go out and say, okay, I know it's being done in Palm Beach County Clerk of Court. I know it's being done over here. I can reach out to them as an official city person and say, can you please give me some information, some background? Who did you use for your vendor? What was your initiation cost? You know, and if I can go out and dig that stuff up and come back and say, last week they told us it was going to be way too much money. I've gotten some information that says it's going to be this much money. I now need our staff to do an actual
you would
full
take
thing.
that responsibility and say, listen, I know I'm only making 11, 13,000, but if I'm being told something, I'm going to do the research and the time it takes to determine, is that true?
More often than not, I'm going to come initially with that information. That's just how I operate. So I would come forward, and if I had said, "Oh, I want this," and they said, "Oh, it's
you
too
would
much
have
money,"
looked into it beforehand.
I would have said, "Well, it is a lot of money. It's X. I've researched it, and I see it's going to be somewhere in this range. I need us to look at it for our specific scenario, what it would cost, and go from there." But I wouldn't want to. I don't think we need to take that as okay. They said it was so much money. Too bad. I think we need to push back a little harder. At least in the dialogue portion of things. I understand, the commission has to have a consensus, and that can be a hindrance at times. But I think we need to do some pushback.
Where do you guys feel about transparency right now with the city? Do you feel?
I don't think we have very much at all. I feel like things are being hidden. We talk about public records requests as a big red flag for transparency, and I'll keep going back to the one example I've got that really shook me. 8 months ago now. When I sent a request in, I said I wanted to know, because I was working on a project to bring what we call community vital signs out. I wanted to get some data out on a website that showed us how our community was functioning in different aspects. One of those is water information, right? I wanted to know how many accounts, just a count by month for the first 6 months of the year, how many accounts had been charged a late fee, how many accounts were disconnected, how many accounts were new, and how many accounts, 4 basic categories. I got a request back that said it was going to cost me over $800 to get that data.
But some of that data, wasn't it already usually published monthly? The disconnects and things?
It used to be, which is why I thought, well, it has to be there. And then I actually sat down with the manager and the head of the bar department at the time, and because I genuinely wanted to know, well, why could it possibly cost this much? And what I realized was that may not be the best example of not transparency, but what killed me was they don't track that data. And that got me thinking, well,
know more, because
what else are they not tracking anymore? And how do you run...
Well, they're not tracking anything anymore.
And how do you run a department of this size without that basic departmental information? Like, that to me is like, how can you make better decisions for your department if you don't know how many accounts were new last month?
Right.
So can I ask a question on that? Because, there's a portion of the city that's on Del North. Did you try to get that same number from the county for the Del North system? Because that's part of Deltona also. And if you want to look at the snapshot of the entire community... and how your people are living and how many disconnects they have and so forth. I would be curious.
Mm-hmm.
I would be curious to know what the county said on the Del North system, what they gave you, how their public records request was.
Well, I didn't go to the county because I was really focused just on the city. What I did do is I went the next day. I asked the same information of Sanford, and I got an answer in an email within 6 hours.
I would be curious to know
Bam, done.
what the county would say, because like I
So
said,
then that's something to.
I mean,
to
I
look
think
at.
that would be really, really good. And I think, with the public records requests, we follow the state statute. Could it be improved on? Absolutely, it could be improved on. I am a big believer in technology. I'm a tech nerd. Like, I think we should have the top of the line technology. I think our water billing system is antiquated. I pay my water bill online.
Wasn't it just
It is,
redone?
but it's still
not good though, right?
It's still very, very
Well,
it's
and
not-
we're starting to see billing issues
These
where
are bad
wrong things
decisions.
are being applied to wrong accounts, and
Oh.
so that's like a whoo, hold up, we need
Yeah,
to
I
fix
mean,
that.
Why if we're going to spend money, and if we're going to have a surplus again this year, within our general fund at the end of the fiscal year, and I know the question was raised about that last night. How do you have a surplus? Because you come in under budget, and we come in under budget for about 900,000 to $1.2 every year.
Well, we also pad our budget to make sure we have a surplus because
But-
that's a smart thing to do.
But you have to do that, Brandy, especially when
Absolutely,
you're looking
you
at
have to.
fluctuating gas prices.
But I think that's important to also bring up is it's not just we came in under budget, because that's not necessarily true in every department, but we did pad the budget like any smart business person would do, is you pad the budget a little bit. So I had a lot of people question that same question is, well, how do you come in reserves? Well, there's a little bit of padding.
Yeah.
You never want to strip it to the core. That's just not business sense. But I really kind of cringe on that we came in under budget, because there's a lot of times where I reviewed where did this excess come, and it's not that we came in under budget. We didn't complete projects.
Well, that's part of it, but in a lot of the things, like you said, you do budget a certain amount for gasoline. If your prices go down on your fleet, then you're good. You budget on. I've seen in different departments they budget on per diem expenses or travel expenses, or they budget on other things that they're able to get a different contract and piggyback on, and then you come in better. So it's just like the same thing that was with the recent garbage contract, the letter that went out, which again, to me, I know the letter went out, it was a form letter and so forth, but it could have been worded a little differently. Because that contacted me. I mean, there was so much.
It did look
disparity.
like it was going to be this huge increase when, in fact, that was like the total cost.
Yeah, and people were thinking, is it going to be that increase on top of what we already pay? And then one woman was so upset. She was like, "Am I going to lose my house?" And I'm like, I'm not really understanding this. What do you mean? How can you lose your house? And then, when I went over it and when I read it with her, and it was like, oh, this one little line said place a lien and all that. I understand it's legalese, but when people read that,
it needs to be broken down.
It's not clear. And so when we budgeted high for the garbage, I mean, we came in definitely under what that was, but you have to do that the same with your millage, because you can't go above that then. So you set a higher parameter. But I mean, if we're going to go ahead and let's say, for example, we come in $1 million under budget this year, take that money, invest it in IT, invest it in your billing system. When I found out, they were building a big lift station next to me for the Leland Stormwater Project for the rib ponds and so forth in the ditch area, the public land that they had there. And a woman came out one day, and I said, oh, and I was home, I said, can I help you? And she said, oh, well, we were supposed to have this inspected yesterday, but the inspector didn't show, and so I had to come back here today. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I have to pay the re-inspect permit, or their people weren't there or something like that. It was legit. They missed each other. And she said, but I had to drive all the way here from Orlando because I couldn't pay it online. And I said, well, can you explain to me now? What do you mean you had to drive from Orlando and bring a check to the city that you couldn't pay that online? And our system wasn't set up for that.
Do we know why?
It just wasn't.
It just wasn't.
It
Okay.
just wasn't.
There isn't like a reason why we...
No, there's no update in a lot of those things. And I can tell you in code enforcement now, we have an antiquated system in their dispatch and everything else. Everybody else in the county runs on CAD. The county paid a lot of money to hook everyone up on CAD for dispatch. Finally, I had gone to Captain Kammerer and I had gone to the manager and I said, this system that we have, there's not software upgrades. There's a lot of breaking down of system. Why aren't we on CAD? And they
So definitely some IT updates and changes.
Oh yeah, and why aren't you not taking advantage of what's there and building up your system? Because how can you not have updates? How can you not be in the modern age with
So
that
have these
stuff?
things come up in the past 8 years
Right,
or so
I mean-
that haven't been like? Does this go back to the blocking thing that you talked about, where
Yeah, a lot
there's
of
no
it is-
consensus for any of this?
Yeah, and a lot of that is like for me, again, as a commissioner, you can't know every minute thing that goes on in the city until somebody tells you. And they tell you that this system is failing, and they tell you that this system isn't upgrading, and most of it is in the IT department, from what I found out. So that has to change.
In terms of the transparency, obviously that's going to send me right into the center. So our next topic is obviously debt control. That came up last night. The center and infrastructure. I want to kind of group those together as quickly as we can on those. My biggest thing with the transparency in terms of the center, it's no secret I've asked for inspections of records. What do you guys feel in terms of what we now know is my first request went in February. I just wanted to know what happened in January. How well did we do? Because as I've said it a million times, this is my investment too. I'm going to track it just like my 401k. I want to know the ins, the outs, the what's not. I asked for those records. I was responded with, they are not ready yet. I took that at face value, although I did wait almost over 2.5 weeks into February. Now I know, because I do end of month reporting, my boss wants that on her desk the 1st in the morning, or whatever that first Monday is after that weekend. It better be on her desk by the time she has to go to her meeting and explain expenses. So for me to hear 2.5 weeks after the month closed, still no financial results of did we do well, did we eat it, I mean, what was good, what was bad, and there was nothing. And so I was like, okay, give them a little more time. I wait till March, ask again. Hey, really would like those January figures. I'm still asking for January. Nothing. April comes around. I bring it up again. Listen, I've asked 3 or 4 times now. I want some financials on January. That's when I get that 1-line piece of paper with 1 line on it with a number that didn't even say it was for the center, by the way, but just some random number line on a piece of paper, and they charged me $5 for it on 1 piece of paper. And it wasn't even what I asked for. And I'll tell you what, when I went back up, because obviously I was a little pissed off at that point. I'd been doing this for 2 years, got lots of runaround, lots of extra fees, paid for blank pages, paid for copies of emails that were duplicates. I had a little bit enough. And none of that is an excuse for the way I spoke, and I say that but it's just how I am. It's my personality. It's how I speak. And I went up there, and I wanted to know, count for that time that you billed me for. That's it. Account for it. If you can legitly say, I had to sit down and do this, this, and this, and it took me this long, thank you, I'm out of your hair, but I still don't think that this is fulfilling my request. But I didn't get that. I got a little bit of the runaround. I was told that it was only 15 minutes, in which I replied, then it would be free. Then it turned to, well, in another 15 minutes, but no explanation of what that took. And when I really wanted to pinpoint the fact that this was not what I even asked for, do you want me to write it on there? I mean, that was a little concerning to me. Like, why isn't it already on there? Now, fast forward a little bit, obviously, because that April incident, I am just now getting records from my request to inspect. I am getting records that I should have got from the request in February, March, and April. And I thanked her for giving them to me, explained to her that that was more fulfilling that request than my request to inspect. And I had set up in July, I went and did a records inspection impromptu, which completely, I'm sure y'all are familiar with the Florida statute. I made sure first that I verified they were the custodian. I verified they were not busy. And I was told that they could not show me records because they were told not to. Long story short, I'm sure everybody's seen the video. I told her, you might want to call that city attorney again. I don't want anybody getting in trouble over this. Whole 9 yards. Back and forth. She was still told not to do it. She then read the statute that I handed her and realized she better comply. And she decided to comply. And I hear her on the phone saying, I'm sorry, but I'm at least giving her the calendars. And that I didn't want to put her in any further risk right there. So I accepted that. And she said, let's set up an appointment. Now, by law, that is a done deal. You set up that inspection appointment, you better have an inspection. I set that up. She asked if she could have a day. I said, I give you 2. Take 2 days. Came back in, still didn't get my records. She was still told not to release to me any records for viewing, because I didn't ask to take them home, but for viewing. Okay, that's a violation. I then set up another appointment in which nothing happened again. Still no records after 2.5 weeks of notice. That's a lot of time to gather some records. Now, I just want to pinpoint before I ask your opinion on this, I want to pinpoint that some of these records absolutely 100% do not need redacted. The city's water bill don't need redacted. The city's electric bill for the center doesn't need redacted. Invoices, I have one. There's nothing on there that needs redacted. I asked specifically for Mike Williams. We all know he does not fall under a redaction name. He does not need redacted. Yet none of these things were presented at the 3 different times I showed up for an inspection. What is your outlook and view on that? I want to give 2 minutes on that. About my first inspection when it was failed was because they were told not to give me records. No other reason why than no. The second one was in front of Joyce. Went up there to ask about the inspection, and she said, I inquired and I got an email back saying there is none. Then, of course, the third time was after somebody came up at the podium, Hooper, and said, well, there are records. They do exist. And I went straight up to Joyce after that meeting. I said, that's a Florida statute violation. And she said, I understand. I mean, what can she say other than I understand? Whether she agreed with me or not, what can she say? From there, I told her I'm automatically emailing you. I didn't ask for what she said she had. I asked for what I asked to inspect. I said it exists. We know, come on, we keep receipts. Show me. What I have since learned and what has come out is that there are records, but they are just shoved in a shit ton of folders. Then pull out the folder and say, take a look. What do you want to see? Again, I'm still not understanding why I have not been contacted to complete my inspection. And this is a $9 million center. So what we have learned on this so far is we didn't hire the right choice to begin with. And I'm going to touch on that in a minute. On top of that, we implemented a $9 million facility with no tracking system. Tell me that ain't true. How do you open a $9 million facility and don't have the basic tools to track money in, money out, contracts, the whole 9 yards? Blows my mind. I want to give y'all 2 minutes. That's a whole lot to talk about, but anything you can think of regarding that, like, I just want to hear your thoughts, because I have tried to see every side to this. I really, truly have. I actually went to inspect yesterday for things that I know do not need redacted, and I saw they were busy, and I said, I'm not going to bother you guys, and I walked right back out, because that is not my goal. But my goal is to make sure that this thing is surviving, and if it's not, where is it failing, and let's fix it. Everybody's saying, oh, she's being a hard ass, she wants to cause problem. No, I want to see where the problem lies and fix it before it becomes so big we can't fix it, and we can't climb out of this. So 2 minutes, let's see who's first. Troy.
You know what? You are right on track with this. Every single one of them is
Okay, go for it.
It's all rigged, isn't it? It's all rigged. Well, the short answer, obviously, is the whole scenario should never have been allowed to happen. I don't think there's anyone that's going to say that anything other than that. That kind of goes back to where I want to. This whole public records idea is there's no reason that these items, these things, shouldn't be done automatically online. You know, even Heidi has mentioned that technology is there. You know, I live in the world of technology. For things that don't include a name, I can't think of a single reason that shouldn't just be automatically monthly posted online. But even more than that, what I'd love to see is every department responsible for producing a report at the city council meetings every month. So we can get a department report, you know, even if I understand that can be written because not everyone wants to go to those meetings every Monday. But I think we need to see, you know, we have the council or the what do you call them, the committee reports, right? I think we should have department reports the same level. You know, where we see how the department operated. We need to see from code enforcement how many complaints came in from what category, how many were resolved, how they were. Like, I think we need as a city to become more aware of all the things that are happening. And the whole idea of the public records request being an inspection or not inspection, how you go and look at those things, it is deeply concerning that we've got this massive building and we don't know making money or not making money. And I understand we might be a little embarrassed because I think anyone who's looking at it from the outside can look at it and say, well, there's not possibly that there's been enough events to really make money.
Okay, it's the first year.
Right.
And I think we all understand that. And we understand that it started from a person who clearly was unqualified to run it, unfortunately got put in a really bad position for whatever reason. And we were promised something that was just undeliverable, and I think we all really knew that was undeliverable. But if we can't openly say, "Poof, month one we didn't do so hot," and talk about it, because there are dozens of people in the community that are
Yes.
event planners that do this for a living, and they
willing
can
to give
offer,
their free expertise.
they would be willing to offer any kind of help. So I think we need to reach out and get that help from people.
Thank you. And Heidi?
And I agree. I think that it comes back to me, it comes back to technology. You should be able to have all that. You should be able to, and we used to do that in the weekly reports for code enforcement and everything like that. And I think there's a way to do that. And even if we, the one thing, when I first got elected, we had the quarterly newsletter that went out, and a lot of those things were in the quarterly newsletter. And then when it came down to cost, it was like, the cost was like $60,000 a pop. It was like by the time you mail out to 34,000 homes and you printed it and you did all that, it was a cost. There was a cost to it. Now, do I agree that we should have the one pager that we have now in the water bill? No, I think that's an antiquated system. But I think that goes back to, if we updated our procedure and if we put more online, and if that was available. The city of Ormond Beach does a thing where they pretty much have like what we used to have. Everything is online and it's done weekly. And it's page upon page with pictures, with everything. Now, you need somebody to do that.
Do we know why it stopped? Because we were doing
Cost. It was a lot of it was the cost in terms of putting out the newsletter.
But I meant putting it online.
It wasn't online that I remember before. Was it?
Yeah.
The
And so was the manager monthly reports. They are weekly.
Yeah.
It used to be on there.
Yes, you're right.
And all the data was
All
in
of
there
it's
now.
gone. They haven't done that in how long?
I really would like to bring that back. Whether you want to go ahead and say it's a cost savings for mailing and everything else like that, then go ahead and put it all online. And again, I'm going to go back to the thing that I believe that we need a phone app, and I'm going to push it and push it. I was declined. They didn't think that it was worth the money. And I'm going to strongly disagree, because there's a lot of things that you can put that's transparent, that's open, that you can put in something like that, and you should be able to pull your data through every month and see that monthly report and do all that on an app.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody know, like, firsthand when, I'm going to stop this, when it stopped being put online? Because it wasn't the website change. It was before that it stopped going on.
Yeah. It was, I think, when they stopped sending out the actual mailer in depth, when we stopped sending out the
check
mailer.
into that.
I think it was about 2 years ago, because it was a cost factor of how much was, that was
what was told? Was that it was a cost factor?
Mm-hmm.
Did it coincide with the hiring of a new manager?
I think it was after Jane came. I think it was, because they were reviewing all the
That's
costs.
what I was saying, because I
reviewing.
remember seeing things
Yes.
early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll agree with the cost of mailing it out can get exorbitant. I mean, running a campaign, I'm looking at doing a mailer.
Oh, yeah.
Especially
no.
when we have so many options to put things online now.
Yeah.
Transparency Florida, if I have that right, .gov, I brought that up, the Q&A. The school board uses it, if I'm not mistaken. They have a little link on there, a transparency link, and you click it, and it takes you to this site. Every financial you can think of, you want to review and look at, it's on there. It blows my mind. Here's my ideal system. I'll pitch it out there like I have before. What I don't understand, and it's going to be cost effective and save money no matter how you look at it, especially with the high rate of public records requests that come in. Why are these documents not immediately redacted and scanned before put into a file? It makes no sense to me why that isn't in place. It saves on staff time. It saves on even having to deal with public records, because boom, it's online. I mean, all around that little bit of time that it's going to take when they're already having it in their hand and having to do their own work. What's it take? 15, 30 seconds to be like, boom, let's redact it, scan it, and be done?
I agree with you 100%. And again, it comes back to the antiquated mentality and the antiquated system.
So we all agree that's got to change.
It has to change, and the money has to be there for it. Believe me, I have tried in many different levels. And, if
here's where I get a little picky with the money has to be there. If we can afford a $250,000 fucking shed, we can afford some of these things.
Again,
okay?
you get no argument from me, Brandy.
I mean,
I'm not arguing that at all.
$80,000 sign. Now I get it. Signage is important. It's very outdated. It was necessary. All that is great. But what I first see when I see $80,000 sign is, that's $80,000 we could put in an audit, clear up this whole mess, and actually get money back in to do that sign. So the thing that just it riles me up. I'm not gonna lie. Every time I hear just like you said, cost a lot of money, drives me up a wall. Because you can't tell me, I've looked at those budgets, you can't tell me that we can't find that money, because we find it for other things. So that just, and I understand departments can only use, like, I get how all this whole thing works. But I want to talk about, you brought up O'Donnell. I actually have that in my notes, because I wanted to bring up, you were there during that time, so obviously this is going to come with you, is at last night's debate, you actually said that when you saw his numbers, you were like, that's a little bit high. Mm-hmm. I know that during that time, I came forward and said that I had went through his resume. I'm going to call it fluff to be nice. And that he was not qualified to run our center. And I screamed it from the mountaintops, because that was the first huge red flags that I seen of, this is a problem if this is the guy we hired, because I also pulled the other options and I looked at the other options. And I'm just like, explain to me how this guy got this job. And it took me, kid you not, 20 minutes to disprove that resume. Where is our HR? Where is our vetting? Because it took me less than 20 minutes to start picking apart that. Down to the fact that he claimed he had a business for so long, but he didn't have a business license that long. That's a very simple thing to check. And so to me, I would have been like, he's either running it without a license, or he didn't have the business as long as he claims. But that wasn't even checked. And I brought it forward, and you're saying that you saw that the numbers were a little high. I even yelled, he's using junk math. I do projections, so I get it. I said he's using junk math. And I short of stood up, jumping up and down to get everybody's attention to say, this isn't right. I was ignored. I didn't get emails. I didn't get responses. At one point, Sukup did bring it forward that, hey, I don't think he's qualified, but it was well after the presentation had taken place. And so my question obviously to you is, if you found it a bit high, you hear me out here squawking and jumping up and down and about to have a heart attack because I know those numbers are false, why didn't you question him? Why didn't you be like, hey, can you explain these a little and how you got these? Because that seems a little high to me, because here we're pitching it to the residents that, guys, it ain't going to cost you a penny first year from the get-go. Now, any business knows that ain't going to happen. So why did the commission allow him to try to fluff us and tell us, y'all are a bunch of dumbasses and are going to believe that this is going to bring in $1 million in the first year? That was where my first biggest issue was at, where I'm looking at you guys going, I'm screaming it. The proof is in the records. I've emailed it to everybody, and nobody's questioning this man who's saying, in my 17 years, which by the way isn't accurate either, experience, this is going to happen at a minimum. He even wanted to say at a minimum that we could far exceed this if we wanted to. I mean, I can't answer that. I just, my biggest thing is, why didn't you say, hey, got a question? I find that a lot. A lot of commissioners don't question the things that all of us are going, hello, doesn't sound right. I mean, is there a reason people don't?
I can't answer for anybody else. I don't know what anybody else thinks. But I'm a person that underprojects. I would rather project low and have a better result and be able to say, this is a minimal goal and we've exceeded that.
Totally agree.
But that's
why didn't you bring it up though?
When I look at that, and again, I'm not a professional in in event planning, in what you can bring in. That's not my forte.
But to my knowledge, though, that would be all the more reason for you to question.
Well, and I
because it's not your forte, and you wouldn't know.
Right, but the numbers to me were way higher than what I could realistically say. That said, I had confidence and more hope than confidence in that this venture was going to become positive. And I think it has become positive. But I also think that center, it ended up being, I think, a lot more, and I don't mean this, a lot more, I'm not talking about money or building. I think it just ended up being bigger.
It did.
A bigger venture than initially we planned for, with staffing and everything else. I personally still think that we're understaffed. I think in facilities we're okay, But I think in outreach and with what Lucinda has to work with, I think again, the commission needs to really look at what you're gonna staff there. And if you are gonna have that kind of a building and that kind of outreach, and it is bringing in things, it's bringing in like the debates, it's bringing in more and more events. But
we're scraping to hit 130,000.
But you have to, but what you have to do, Brandy, is you have to have the staffing there. If you are short on the front end and you provide events and they have a bad experience.
True, and I don't want to cut you off, but let's put it realistically. Why wasn't that thought about before we opened the doors?
Because
this is a $9 million debt on all of us, every single one of us. I don't like debt. Okay, I'll say that now. Me, here's a quick question: do you support bringing back that in the charter, where they removed it, where the voters had to vote on this type of debt? Suddenly removed quite at the right time, because then this was able to go through without our approval in a vote. All we got to see was a presentation full of fluff. And I'm going to call it fluff because I can pinpoint every part on that slide that is junk math. And it's sad because I'm looking at my elected voice up there and he's going, and I'm going, dude, I just showed you everything. Why aren't you saying I have a resident who is concerned with the numbers? Explain the numbers. That's my biggest thing. Why did none of y'all question it? Because there's no way any of y'all believe that center would bring in $1 million the first year.
I can't speak for anybody else.
Well, but for you, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say, listen, I think your numbers are a little high. Can you walk us through how that's going to happen? I want somebody up there that's going to question. That's going to have, because it's going to be hard, and you're going to hit those. And I know Anita brings up retaliation. I don't know if you want to say if you feel or have ever felt any type of, I kind of got to go with the grain, just, save face or, any type of retribution. But we need somebody up there that's going to be strong enough to say, sorry that this goes against the grain, but you better explain to me what that number means. And I'm talking in every department, because there's other departments that come up with some things and I'm going, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. That's far-fetched. That's shaded. It's just not legit, but it's being fed to the public like it is. And then they wonder why there's no trust. This is a prime reason. That's why I keep going back to it. It's a prime reason why there's not trust, and why our elected officials shouldn't just be trusting what they're told either. If you think that there's something wrong with that number, I really wish you would have said the smallest thing of, can you explain that number? Because it seems a little high to me. Just something to say, hey, look, to us residents, she spoke up and said she thought it was a little odd too. Now you may get a fluff answer, but you asked. And so that's my, when I'm processing all of this and I'm saying, who do I want as my next mayor, my next represented voice in a district? I look at who is going to have the gall to stand up and say, I question that. I'm not saying you're not doing your job, but understand I have a job too, and it's to protect my constituents. So that was my question to you is, why didn't you ask them? Why? I mean, you said you questioned the number.
I'm going to say for several reasons. I questioned it personally for myself. I looked at the numbers, and again, I project low and hope that we chose something. The center, the way the center was set up, the way the debt was set up on the center, that is the $400,000 a year is budgeted in our cost. It is budgeted in the general fund. So if the center brings in nothing, it does not, I'm not saying it should bring in nothing. I'm not saying that you don't have a goal to do a break even of at least what we talked about last night, the $400,000 and $407,000 in debt service. That should be a goal to at least have income. If you want to start at 100,000, 200,000, but the budget itself contained the debt service on it. The center's existence and success or failure was not based on the numbers that were projected.
But to us it was.
And maybe
to us residents it is.
And that's a lack of communication as well. Because to me, the budget itself, the debt service is budgeted. It's budgeted
but
for
to
the
me,
entire.
It was misleading the public to say, the guys, you don't have anything to worry about. We're going to break even. Do you see our point of view?
I totally see your point, because if somebody told me that, then I would say, oh my gosh, you didn't break even. Are you going to default? You know what I mean?
Well, my
that
first
would be
thought
the-
when I saw we weren't going to break even is I knew the numbers were fluff. Nobody wanted to listen to me. And now what the hell are we going to do? Because you sold us a center that was going to break even. We're going to be upset it's not breaking even.
You know, the debt service is one part of it, but there's also the operational cost, which is another
A whole
half
nother
million
story.
dollars,
Right.
So we really need to look at this as it costs us about $900,000, $1 million a year to operate this thing between the debt service
Upwards now
right.
because we've added positions
and as you said, we need more. So
Right.
this thing is going to end up costing us even more than we had ever anticipated. And when I look at that, I look at the O'Donnell resume, I look at the public records issues, I see a systemic issue in general management around the city. And to me, that just speaks volumes that, you know, we've got a management setup that's not really conducive, you know, and this may not be true, so I hate to put it out there, but what I have heard is the hiring of O'Donnell did not go through the official HR channels as much as it went through the city manager's desk. And if that's the kind of decisions that we're relying on, that just gives me, you know, that keeps me up at night. It really, really does, because I don't understand, like you mentioned, how
not proper vetting.
How these things go through. And that's not the only example of someone who was hired maybe
Correct.
not right for that job. And it's, you know, it's terrible for that person, it's terrible for us, and now we end up, you know, the center it's a gorgeous building. It absolutely is. It's I love it. I think it's an awesome thing to have.
Agreed.
I just don't know, you know, 3 or 4 years ago in the started process that we needed to do it now.
It was the right time.
You know, I think we had to look at, you know, let's maybe get out from under some of the water debt first before we walk into this, as you call it, a venture, right? And then the other part of that venture is the idea that we own the liquor license. And as a citizen, to me, that's really concerning that the city would not just take on the idea that, okay, now I'm going to manage this thing. And as you mentioned, we don't have the expertise to manage an event center. We certainly didn't have to manage a catering company, you know, in essence as well, or sell this alcohol. And there's a lot of potential for huge liability and crazy problems for the city responsible for. Because I went to, you know, put an event in that building, and I just couldn't foot the cost. It was an Elvis impersonator that I work with, and I wanted to have something, you know, to bring in an Elvis impersonator. Oh, sorry, Elvis tribute act. They don't impersonate; they're Elvis tributes. Let me get that right, because I got named for that. But you know, so I did. I legitimately went in there and I said, what's it going to cost? And to have a Friday night concert, the cost was going to be more than I could pay my live band and my performers. And then I said, the bar, it's going to be $150 setup and $50 an hour. But I get none of that proceeds as the customer. I mean, why am I going to pay the city to sell my people alcohol that I get no proceeds from? That whole idea just boggled me. And then I asked, well, I want to put a merch table out because obviously, you know, the guy's going to go sign, you know, photographs. Mm-hmm. And I get the response, well, I got to call the city manager because I think she's going to want a cut of that. I mean, we obviously do not know how to run that kind of business, right?
How long ago was that?
3 months ago.
So was it under the new people?
No,
okay.
It was
because
yeah. And I know a lot of things have changed, and I think, like I said, the 2 new people that we've hired, they seem to be really on the ball.
They have a very good background.
I think they have but they also, you know, we don't know how much money we made in the first 6 months. This building we are not going to have enough to cover.
I have a small idea
service.
now, if you'd like the numbers.
But we're not going to have enough to cover the debt service plus the operational costs. For
you don't
sure.
want to know that.
And I think we all knew that going in. But again, you know,
it was fluff.
We have to be sure that as a commission, you are strong enough to say, that doesn't make sense.
That's my point. We need somebody in there that's going to question this, because we're questioning it. And if y'all are our voice, we would hope that y'all are like making sure that's all right.
Well, and just to piggyback back on what we talked about putting the center up at that time, the catalyst, I mean, a new community center has been talked about since before I got on the commission. And the background, which I'm sure you know, is the older lady that passed away that left a bequeathment to the city. She didn't leave it to the city, she left it to Council on Aging and Salvation Army.
Specifically for the new
helping
center.
the seniors and building the programs and so forth. And we all know that the old community center was a hazard, and it still is. The parking lot is better now that they put the trail in there, but for senior citizens, and to go ahead and pave that, and to go ahead, you'd have to redo the stormwater underneath, and that alone was going to be over like around $500,000 to go ahead and just restructure the parking lot with stormwater, not to mention what went on with the building. And when the Council on Aging, I can't remember, it was like $350,000, they put a deadline on the money. They said you have to use the money, and I believe it was a 2-year deadline, or they would take the money. So that considered the ball rolling more and faster in order to get rolling with this concept. That was the initial catalyst to really make the center a reality. And from my point of view, I just think it's something that the city needed. We needed some type of an event center for 90,000 people. And I said this last night, we have nothing. We don't even have, like, when I came here,
But
we
in
had the
all
Deltona
honesty, we
Inn.
still don't have anything. I would love to hold birthday parties there, debates there. I mean, all kinds of stuff. But I will be damned if I pay a $250 deposit for a $25 room. Okay, I did it once. You won't see it happen again. Not to mention they put it on a credit card, so I accrued interest while they waited to pay me back. So why? Because they didn't know how to separate the two and let me pay one as a hold and one as a payment. Big red flag yet again. But the reason I have to hold on that is it just, the whole thing kind of blows my mind in the fact that it's not what it started out to be anyhow. Now, anybody who knows anything about community centers, they don't make profits. They just don't. They're not supposed to. It's a community center. It turned into an event center in hopes that we could reduce that debt and bring in some money so that it's not on us to fund. I understand that lady left the money. I looked into all that, and it was very specific on what she wanted it used for and the whole 9 yards with that. But I still can't fathom why it's not reasonably priced for the residents who are already paying for it. And I sat with O'Donnell very early on, and I said, let me give you some ideas to help get this thing some momentum. Get people to know it exists. Get people to see how beautiful it is. But it means you're going to have to be Deltona prices because, well, you're in Deltona. And he said that's not possible because I have a budget to meet. I have a goal I have to meet. And I said, but your goal is fluff and unrealistic. And he goes, but that's what I'm told to do. So, again, it goes back to another problem. Who told him that? You know, isn't he supposed to be the manager who says what's the best ideas to bring in the business? But he's being told, no, I'm being told my ideas aren't going to be okay, and we have to do it this way. So again, now we have a little bit of a conflict because you just hired someone at a pretty decent price to say how things should be run and to bring in that money. But when he goes forward with it, he's told, no, we can't do that way. We want it done this way. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay $300 every time I want to rent a room for 2 hours. It's just not realistic. So, yeah, it's not a lot of money, but it's money that would be coming in on these days that we don't have anything going on anyhow. So my question to you guys, will you look at restructuring and look at the fees and look at maybe making it more community accessible? Because I'm being honest, it's not community accessible. It's not. I know so many people that be like, oh, I want to put a birthday party there. Oh, found out it's going to cost me $400. Never mind. $400?
No, I think there's definitely needs to be consideration for Deltona groups and organizations that are in Deltona, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts.
Lots of
school
people would
groups,
love to use it. Everybody comes back with the same thing. We can't afford to use it. How sad is our own residents? And then they stopped letting us rent out the old community center.
But I think that's going to change.
So now we can't, but what I'm saying is now we have no options. It's the center or we're doing it in our backyards.
No, I think we're going to look at reopening the community.
I really
center
hope
for
so.
events. We are.
I really do.
And it was really, for me, it was, I was not happy that it was going to be closed. I was against that.
It's a great location.
It
We
is
need
a
to
great
use
location,
that. Absolutely.
and I think the building needs to be used.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at some point you're going to incur vandalism. You're going to see if there's no use there, and why not use it? The condominiums next door, what they would like.
Well,
to have
I
some
asked
events
why
there.
not use it when we had that meeting at that place. And I asked why won't, and they were going to keep it open for those meetings that were already going on there. But then they shut it down to anybody else using it for like a birthday party. I said, why?
Again, staffing.
No. Jane told me why. Because we want everybody to use the center. And I said, but Jane, not everybody can afford that center.
Well, and that center isn't what a lot of some people may want. Somebody maybe doesn't.
Might be too much.
They want to not. They don't want to go and have something there. They want to have something down by the lake, by the water, by in that area. Maybe you want to have a party. You're going to go to Green Springs. You're going to use the trail. I mean, it's a completely different venue, and it should have a completely different marketing plan. That's just the way I feel about it. But I do believe that's going to change. I think we're going to go ahead and look at, since there's been no true interest in, you know, a private person coming in there, a private group coming in there to turn it into a restaurant or something, which would be great if we had some sort of a trailhead there. And I think I'm confident that that's going to happen in the future.
Well, that would be a positive for a lot of residents, let alone, I think, income-wise for the city. So,
and then I don't know, I know this is your debate, but my question might be to you,
yes,
Troy and Brandy, is what is your view on the amphitheater in Lyonia? Because
I'll give you mine.
Yeah,
I'll give you
I want to
mine.
hear it.
I think they should all be separately. It shouldn't be a package deal. That's my first and foremost. I've looked into the different things. It doesn't have to be a package deal. We have ways to work with it. I was one that spoke out about Lyonia and cutting the funding for Lyonia. I know how important it is to our local schools. My little niece goes there now. I think it's a hidden gem that needs to be maybe a little more publicized at times, but it's getting there. I know a lot more people know about it. Amphitheater, I don't believe we should upkeep. I think we've paid our dues on it. I think we paid for upkeep that never happened, and I don't believe that we should foot another penny for that amphitheater. But I don't believe in cutting out the funding for Lyonia. I just don't. I think it's one of our good programs, one of the things that we actually have going for us in Deltona. And when I found out that she was going to cut all funding, obviously it was enough for me to put my own things I want to talk about aside and focus on talking about that, because of how important it is, especially to our local schools. And I'm still upset that the funding was cut on it. I mean,
join the club.
I felt it was the wrong decision, and I don't want to hear it's about money, because like I said, that's another thing that's going to go up my ass a mile, because let's talk about spending money, okay? That's not something nobody wants to bring up with me. But I do agree with we should not have been footing any more for that amphitheater. We had paid 10 times our dues. We paid for yearly upkeep that didn't happen. I think they should have been split. And I know I'm not the favorite, and Jane doesn't like me, and feelings mutual. So that doesn't mean I think she shouldn't take ideas or suggestions and actually have an open mind to that. I cannot like a lot of people, but I'm still going to hear you out. I'm still going to hear what you have to. I may not agree, but I'm going to hear you out. But I wouldn't even get that. It was just a shutdown no across the board. I'm like, why can't you split it? Lyonia is huge.
The commission didn't want it. It was a commission consensus of probably 5. McFall and I wanted it. And I don't remember if there was any other interest. The rest of them did
this
not
came
want
up
to
before
fund it.
McFall too, though.
I know.
Before
and it's
McFall
always
was even
been
there.
The same thing, and you want to talk about trying to bring something forward and trying to fight for something. I mean,
was the fight there? Was it? Listen, this is why. This is this. This is that.
Over and over again. There's a consensus that the deal was bad. We shouldn't have paid it.
Absolutely.
But understand that when that was first built, the city wanted to make it bigger. The city was the one that wanted more. That commission, that city at that time, that group wanted to make the amphitheater, instead of what I think it was originally going to be 300 people to whatever the thing is now. We have all the power. It's in our power how we want to hold events there. It's always been that way. We have the power to hold whatever events we wanted. We could have run the concession there. Instead, it's closed up and nothing. So, I mean, to me, it's a failure on our part. Yeah, it's a failure on our part.
But at one point, it was. The concession was open and running, because I've been there and I've had stuff from the concession.
How long has it been closed? 2-3 years?
Quite.
4 years?
At least 2 or 3 years, at least.
At least. And it's very sad for me to see that. I mean, I fought every single time to, go ahead and try to have more events there. We should be having holiday events there. We should be having Battle of the Bands with the high schools there. It's a free venue. People don't have to pay to go to events there. I just don't understand the negative attitude about that, and it bothers me. So when you look at what we talked about before, consensus, working together, I've been on the losing end of that one for I can't tell you how long.
Well, then, why can't we? Wouldn't that be a good opportunity to then talk to the commission and re-educate them? Because in all the meetings I've been to, not a single meeting has been about educating them on the opportunities for that. So where are these discussions happening that aren't being done?
They don't want to hear it. It's not. It's
because
like,
it is a gem in our thing. I agree. Cutting the funding is terrible for the whole thing, and splitting it was a great idea. It's a county facility, the amphitheater. So the county. I think in general we have a problem in our city with not being able to hold the county properly accountable for. I mean, things like EMS transport, things like our roads, our medians, all kinds of county services that we seem to ask for and never get, and that seems to be a really reoccurring problem for the last however many years that we can't get past this idea of they just don't want it, so it gets shut down, and there doesn't seem to be any pushback.
Which is why I asked, what are y'all going to do when those things happen? Because we can't keep having ourselves shut down by a clique of people who say, I want it my way, and I'm not going to be open to any other suggestions. That's why we're here. It can't be that mentality. It has to be like, I understand you have your opinion, but I do too, and we need more discussion about this. We need to bring up the fact that that there's free availability, and we could have used the concession. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I feel that just little bit of tweaks or a little bit of backbone of saying, listen, I'm still standing strong on this.
But that's where the public has to, if the public feels strongly about something like that, the public has the power for, especially for something like Leone and the amphitheater, come to the commission meeting and say how you use it.
But you know as well as I do, we don't feel powerful there. We're told we're guests. So how does that really want, how does that invite people to come out and say, speak up for what you want? Because we do, and then we don't feel that we're even listened to. So,
but I disagree with that.
I don't feel listened to.
But see, I listen to you.
Do you answer me? Do you respond in an email and say, this is what I found out for you?
On some things, yes. On other things, no. When it's a general consensus email and it's a legal
I don't remember
question,
any emails being answered,
when legal
any questions.
When they're considered legal questions.
Not legal. I'm not talking about this last time, because let's bring up legal, though. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's bring up legal.
Let's go.
Well, no, I think there's...
You could finish your thought, but I'm going to bring up legal, because that was a perfect question I had.
There have definitely been, in my opinion, like there's been years now of the commission not being able to, I don't feel like any one commissioner, except for a couple that are no longer there, has felt strong enough to stand by something strongly, and that is sorely lacking. I think that hurts the ability to listen to the people when we have our representatives that won't fight enough for something. If it's too easy to say, oh, I don't want to make any waves, and I think that's become the norm over the last few years, and that's a terrible thing to see in a government, I think. And the two that were, I hate them, love them, whatever. They were robber rousers, if you want to call them that. But they were standing up for people that are the small minority. And the whole point of our argument, in a lot of ways, is it's not just majority rules. I mean, majority does get to set a lot of things, but it is the responsibility of the people that are elected to understand, fight for, and acknowledge the minority view, and give it the consideration it deserves, and be able to say, you know what. The majority is saying this, but I really truly believe this needs to be different, and I'm going to keep going after it. I'm going to keep doing it. And if I, as a mayor, as a commissioner, if I have to go out to the people and take it out there and say, I want this thing to happen. It's not happening. I need you all to do this, write letters, do this, make phone calls, come here, show up. I have not once heard anyone from our government say, we need the people to involve in this. It's been very. I feel like they don't want us to be there, and I have to agree with Brandy that I feel a lot of times they don't listen to people that come up to that the podium unless they're being very complimentary, and then it's all let's have the conversation and let's talk back and forth.
There's dialogue,
but then someone comes up and is critical, and I mean I know you've heard it because you're up there, but we see the rolling eyes, we see the huffing and the under the breath comments, and
how long is this going to last?
That stuff, it grates on me like no one's business, and it's terrible that we are in a position where the people feel like crap, when they want to come up and say something and they walk away.
And I can say from experience, I had other people coming to these meetings and they were all gung-ho until they realized, what's the point? What I'm saying isn't making any difference. Nobody's actually listening to me. I didn't get any responses back after weeks of asking, and they stopped coming. I can't fault them for that. Trust me, there's many times I don't want to sit my ass in that meeting either, because I know what I'm going to say is really not going to matter. But I got the personality that says I'm going to say it anyways. And a lot of people don't have that personality. Last question, since we got into legal, is we're going to talk about crime in the city. I know that's like a big thing that people are talking about. I know we have the CompStat meetings and whatnot. And also, obviously, crime within. So any type of misconduct or whatnot. So first question is going to go to...
I've got them rolled tighter this time.
Yeah. I was playing with them. Heidi.
Okay, go for it.
It's so far, it's back and forth.
Is it really?
Yes.
It is, isn't it?
Every
That's
time.
so weird.
Every time. So obviously it's going to be a your thoughts type of thing, because when it comes with crime, obviously you guys don't have a whole lot of hand in how some things are run or some things are done or whatnot, because again, we don't have our own police department. So my first question with thoughts is, your thoughts on community policing. We've heard that a lot. We've heard that that's going to be enacted, and we're going to have like deputies who get to know their neighborhoods and whatnot. And I haven't seen it happen. So my question is, what are your thoughts on it, and do you have any plans on maybe pushing to get that to be implemented, or any thoughts on that? And I'm only going to do 1 minute on this one.
Okay, so community policing, everyone knows we have the sheriff's department, and in the past it's been a very, very difficult, Deltona had the reputation from from citizens, from the deputies and so forth. It was a dumping ground for if a deputy didn't do something right, they were sentenced to Deltona. Now, how true that was.
Can I tell you
Yes.
how true it is?
Yes.
I went to the Citizens Academy meeting, and they verified it there. You were in the same class as Deltona was the joke.
I know.
The butt of every joke is if you get disciplined, you're sent to Deltona. Yep. If you pissed off the wrong person and you need, taught a lesson, you get shipped to Deltona. So I could verify that for you. It came from them themselves.
I mean, again, like I said, I just say in my position, that's what I've heard, and I've heard it enough times that there had to be some truth to that, and not just one or two disgruntled people that were angry to be sent out here. So when you had that kind of a mentality, how do you develop a sense of community? How do you even develop any type of a sense of community? You don't. And so I think things are changing, but there's also the shortage of employees department. I mean, they're down 50 deputies. They need more and so forth. So I think absolutely community policing, yes. The police, the deputies at the schools should be out interacting with the kids that are walking to school, with the people that are there. Be at the stops and be involved. And I think once you start that, you'll see the community reach together as well. I know I'm done, so.
I interrupted, that's why I let you keep going.
Fine.
Community policing is the only way that we're going to have a community that grows in security and feels safe. And we, as Deltona, we pay a really large bill to the Volusia County Sheriffs for our police force. And I have to mention this because I would be remiss if I didn't. It really concerns me when the sitting sheriff, which we pay a lot of money to, endorses a candidate. I think it presents a really bad cross of, we are doing our budget right now, which is what we're, he's in our budget. We have to pay him. And it really kind of disturbs me when he gets involved in our city politics in that way. And I just have to put that out there that it really does.
Well, it
unnerves me a lot.
A comment did come in, and I jotted it down because I didn't know how I felt about the comment. It was sad, but on the other hand, also perception. So I'm going to let you finish your word.
It's a terrible perception, I think. And I just had to put that out there because it's been on my mind, obviously, for today's reasons. But back to community policing, it's critical to me that, again, we pay them a lot of money. We need to, I think, be a lot more strong with them. I feel like we just kind of give them a check and we hope for the best. And I think that's a terrible way to go about it. We need to demand certain things. We need to demand accountability. We used to get reports from them about where their cars were, what was going on. I don't see those anymore. We need to demand that accountability. We need to demand that, okay, we are giving you all this money. We expect these specific things. I think we deserve the right to give them a lot more direction and use that to our advantage that says, okay, we know that this neighborhood has a problem. Let the citizen call the city. And when we get enough complaints about speeding on this street or this happening on this street, that the city can say, I need a patrol here on these times. I need this to happen. And we need to give that direction because we do pay them a lot.
And they do that. If residents call in and they have issues, I mean, the emails come through a lot of the time where there are certain streets that people feel like there's drag racing, and they do put patrols there and they do monitor, and there's an after action report. And if I can just say, you're absolutely right in terms of when I first got on the commission, they would micromanage. Does the water department really need to have a new set of boots? And do we need to pay the notary thing for X amount of notaries? But a $10 million contract was just rubber stamped. It was never even opened. Right. And
see that a lot.
And I had a big problem with that because it was just like, okay, no. And I had requested in the past, like if you look at Palm Beach County with their sheriff's department, every municipality that's covered by the sheriff's department has their own webpage. And it looks like a city, and your district, your commanders there, your captains there. It shows a population. It shows things. It's much more inclusive. We had in our note that was going out, our letter, our mail out that was going out, our quarterly report, the 860 number that was up there, that was listed on there. You called that number after 5 and you got nothing. You got a voicemail. I mean, it took 2 years, and I pounded to get that changed. 2 years. I said, it's still not changed. How difficult is this to do a rollover? Why is that number there? That's not good. Those are the little things. I agree with you. We need to demand more. And I've seen a big change with this sheriff in terms of being here, visibility, making Deltona a focus, because they are our police department. Whether you agree with whether we should have our own or the sheriff's department.
I mean, I'll put my opinion out there. Absolutely not. We should not have our own. It's definitely not now in the current condition of our city. 100% no.
But I would still like to see more accountability, more reporting.
Yes.
I mean, the CompStat
That I
meetings
agree
are great.
with.
The CompStat meetings I've gone to, I find them to be very informative. I find them to be interesting to see, what kind of crime is happening, and it's all because people keep leaving doors unlocked and things like that, and it creates an awareness that I think we can use. But I've not once seen the city or anyone after those CompStat meetings present something to the to the residents that says, here's the most common issue. Break it down, because those reports are people like me. They're very they're databases, they're cards. There needs to be.
Yeah, I got pretty bored early on.
Yeah, there needs to be something that comes out afterward that says, I think.
And I like numbers, but I'm still like.
But it's incumbent on the city, I think, to say, okay, we have this CompStat meeting. Here's the breakdown of these many things happened, and this is the most common reason why it happened, and here's what you can do to prevent it happening to you.
And those things should be put on the website. All that data should be on the website and everything. And I'm good, thank you. I still have. And it should be part of a commission report. It should be when we have these reports, when there's a CompStat meeting, if you don't want to get up there and spend 5 minutes talking about it or 10 minutes talking about it, then at least have the data available. Have the maps available, because I
Goes
find
back
them
to technology and
Exactly. And I don't understand how we can't just click a few things and have that available. You should be able to do it like that. Am I wrong?
No, it's that
Okay.
simple. And so
It
why, I keep after asking, if it's not been done that way since forever,
Why?
What are the roadblocks that we've had for the last 12 years?
Change is hard. Change is very
So
hard.
I just want to touch on the endorsement thing, because my understanding, and I haven't got to talk to you about it, but I was able to talk to Santiago about it. But have you had a chance to sit with him and talk to him about your views or anything?
No.
See, and that's where my concern comes in is when somebody, especially of power, comes in and makes an endorsement, and whether we like the endorsement or not, at least for me, I know when I first got into this, there was some candidates, especially in my specific district, that at first I was like, no way, no how. Especially in my own district, because that's going to be my voice. But I gave them an opportunity anyhow. I'm going to be honest, they started changing my mind. I got to know them a little better. I got to understand some of the things, the questions that I had. They were very forward in giving me the answers that I was just curious of. And so it was hard for me when I saw that endorsement as well, is I'm just like, well, surely he sat with Santiago and Troy too and just felt that you're obviously the better choice. And everybody has the right to that opinion. And that's my opinion, obviously. I don't know, rights and wrongs of, people power. But if he didn't even sit with you, to me, that's a little concerning, because how does he know what your views are?
Well, I think that's
what
concerning
you
in general for endorsements. Obviously I have none because I'm just little old me over here. But I still have to go back to if a company that we were doing business with, if a vendor, because essentially the Volusia County Sheriff is a vendor for us, right? I mean, we contract a source with them. And if obviously we can't go to another county, there's no choice there, I get that. But if other vendors started to endorse candidates, how can we expect the contracting process to be fair and equitable when there's that
could be on
perception?
that line.
It's a perception for sure.
And that's where I want to bring this protection, because there was a comment that was made earlier, obviously on my page, and it kind of stuck with me, because I'm like, it's sad, and it was like, it hurt to see that's how, where we are today. But it was also kind of eye-opening. And so it went along lines of, because I want you to hear this, and I want you to give your opinion on it, because we want to know how you feel about that too, because it's important for me to know. So it talked about, with the whole situation, obviously regarding me and obviously regarding Patty and how it involves the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Specifically, more than one person, but specifically one person said that they found that the endorsement was, and I'm going to quote it, is if you think you were afraid before, fear me more today. And they basically felt that was you showing your badge and your power. And I get it's definitely perception and things like that. But that's where we're at. That something as simple as an endorsement can be viewed as, I'm flexing my power and look, I can do just as much damage. And it all stems from allowing the behavior to exist that we can call on VCSO to go handle simple complaints. So I want to know, like, knowing that was a perception that came out, like, how do you feel about that? Because I felt horrible. Because I'm just like,
to me, that's really surprising to me that somebody would feel that way, because that's not
a
me
lot
at
of
all.
people.
And I understand that from the standpoint of, I'm not the most well liked person in the group of people that absolutely feel that way. That is, that to me that's the last thing that I would have ever thought that somebody would think. And I say that sincerely, and I'm sorry that they feel that way.
Well, and that's why I felt split, because I'm just like, we're in a time now that we have to even question something like this because of the situation that's currently here.
But I can tell you that, that this particular sheriff and other sheriffs in the past have endorsed candidates. They've endorsed candidates from the governor down. And let's go back 2 years ago. Let's go back to the races 2 years ago when we had the majority of the commission endorse a sheriff's candidate. Okay, and
I came in around that time.
Okay, and so that's the other side of the coin. At what point do you say, all right, you're endorsing this person for X, and who's doing the endorsements? I mean, and I agree, it can be a fuzzy line, but the endorsements are out there from different candidates, different former candidates, and so forth. But that is troublesome to me that somebody would think
and that's
that.
why
and I'm glad you told me that, because that is so far from who I am as a person.
But understand where the perception's coming from is because of the current situation and the fact that, at least I'm going to put out there, because I always have, I felt I was retaliated against. I know for 100% fact I didn't violate that statute. I know that statute forwards and backwards. Being in the position I was in of trying to adopt, the last thing I would do is set myself up for some type of felony charge. Be realistic. My background is criminal justice. My background is fraud detection. My background is numbers. It is these are my fortes. Like I told you, tech, not my forte. Don't ask me about any of that stuff. I'm not going to be able to tell you, because I stopped back in the MySpace coding days, okay? That's where I stopped my technology, okay? It became too much. I gave up. I moved on to other things.
Well, I think it's important that these perceptions get acknowledged like
Yes.
this, because I think it kind of is, it can be even a bigger red flag if there's a disconnect where you're not even aware that these things could be perception issues. But I understand, endorsements have happened since the beginning of time, but to me, the line really, has to be, if we as a city are working through a contract for the people that are going to enforce laws in our city, and we have current, it's been in the paper, it's been on the news, we have current issues where that same connection has been used to come after a couple citizens. With all of that happening, I would expect no political connections to be highlighted in an election year during budget time. For all these things happening, to me, I think that just clears that sends so many wrong signals that like that,
especially with the broken trust right now, and which is why I wanted to hit that home first, is repairing that trust, because everything else is going to stem from that. Everything. I mean, these problems, perceptions are going to stem from that. Moving forward in economic development, it's been said over and over, these things will stifle those things. So it's important that it gets addressed, which comes into, like I said when we talked about the attorney, $400,000 a year plus is what we're currently spending on a city attorney. And in the last 2 years, and I've watched very carefully, I have seen us opened up to multiple lawsuits. Simple things that could have been avoided. Public records inspections for one. Multiple lawsuits we've been opened up to under a $400,000 a year contract. And then you have a resident stand up and say, explain to me this statute. And our $400,000 that I'm paying for out of my paychecks doesn't have an answer for me. They should already know, because before it went to Volusia County, it should have went to attorney. Did she do something wrong? Before it went anywhere, our city attorney should have been aware of it and say, did she do something wrong? $400,000. Our $400,000 attorney has also not prohibited things on the dais that could open us up to some issues and some lawsuits. So my question is, what do they do for $400,000? I understand liens, taking care of code enforcement tickets, But when I compared their salary, because I've done it, and with Vos, to salaries of other cities, it's comparable in some cities. The difference is those cities have police departments. And we all know legal fees for the police departments are your most expensive thing. You are going to have quite the legal expenses when it comes to a police department. We don't have that. We don't have to cover the issues with the police department. Why are we paying the same amounts as some of these cities who gets the whole shebang?
Well, which cities, I could ask, which cities did you look at?
Oh, there was Port Orange. I believe Altamont was one we looked at. A couple that Vos actually worked for down in South. I want to say Miami. This was about 2 years old. So worked with me on remembering the exact cities. But I know Port Orange was one. Altamont. I don't think we touched on Orlando. Demographics were just a little bit too different for comparisons on there. Winter Springs may have been one that we touched on. And it's comparable. Like I said, I didn't find anything outrageous, besides for what they have to cover.
What I can tell you is there was I've looked into it, and a lot of the budgets for the cities in Volusia County, you have to really dig for legal fees. Okay, you have to look, because the legal fees are put in every single department, and they're put in like
yes.
that. I can tell you that Ormond Beach is over $750,000 for their legal fees. They have 3 attorneys. Two attorneys, and the whole paralegal staff.
But that included the paralegal staff.
I believe it included, but again, you're looking at
because I'm not including our paralegal staff.
Then you have to go into which other departments they are, because a lot of those outsource labor.
So let me ask you this: do you feel we're getting $400,000 worth of representation?
Yes.
Do you feel we're getting $400,000 worth of representation?
From my perspective, no. I don't.
Because I mean that's my bottom line. Is I don't feel it, and you know obviously way more of the ins and outs of what they do.
I can explain to you why I feel that way. Why
I want
feel
you
that
to.
Way. Okay, so when I first got elected, we had I just apologize. I'm not even sure who was there. It was one attorney. I was at one meeting where they fired another attorney when the mayor was out of town and all this kind of stuff, and then we had all this continuum with attorneys. So what I found out with for the longest time that we had an in-house attorney, and we've been through firms and in-house attorneys, and I can also want to clarify what was said last night. In-house attorneys in-house attorneys meet a residency requirement, a firm does not. That is clear. And so when you had the in-house attorneys, and when you looked what was there were 4, 5, 6 years of backed up documents that they never touched. There were lawsuits that were sitting there. There was, what were they earning for their $135,000 a year? Plus you're paying benefits, plus you're paying a severance package, plus you're paying all the fees that you have to do to belong to all these organizations, $50,000, $75,000 in all these different fees and organization memberships. Plus you're paying health insurance, you're paying all these benefits. Those are, when you look at a line item of what you're paying your legal attorney, $135,000 a year, you got to click what else you're paying in, which you don't pay for a firm. You don't pay health insurance. You don't pay a severance package. They come with all their things that you have to do. So for a city this size, and the issues that both Vos Law Firm and Fowler and Feeney have had to clean up alone, of the lawsuits that were there and the lawsuits that they had to go through that have been backed up by having an in-house city attorney, where it's, and again, I'm not saying one, I'm not, causing any issue where I'm saying it one or another. I'm just saying, when you don't clear your cases, you're insured your job, and you're insured that you have enough work there to keep you going for however long. And that is why I'm a strong believer in a firm.
I get cleaning up
and that. Completely. And when you
but in terms of bringing more in, they had opportunities to stop lawsuits from coming in. And I'm not saying they didn't try, because I don't have the record of that yet. And I'm not talking about myself, but other cases that are currently open, that I feel that maybe a wrongdoing was done. It opened us up to a lawsuit. But when I researched that, there was always an opportunity for us to prevent that lawsuit. And so then I have to sit back and say, why didn't they? And is it because it's, we don't like it and this is our way? Because you have that already mentality of...
No, I don't agree with that on the law firms. I think the Vos Law Firm, Becky Vos is one of the most respected attorneys.
She's a liar. I have her on the dais lying.
Well, either way,
on tape.
The Vos Law Firm, when Becky came in, there were a lot of cases that they cleared up that were sitting there. There were a lot of cases that Becky did that went ahead and her
I
team. I'm not
don't
saying
dispute
only
that,
her,
right?
that they cleaned up and that they won for us. There were also the thing that she instituted where she instituted the foreclosures and the things where we are receiving money now in from the banks, where all these homes sat there and
Right,
those
and I'm
kind
not
of
saying
things,
they didn't do anything.
but I'm just saying those were things that were never ever done in the past.
Now that they've all been done, do we still need to pay that much
Yes.
more money again?
Yes,
Because if
because
it's all been cleaned up,
Right.
wouldn't we be back
and
to...
I'm not saying they didn't do anything. What I'm saying is, are they protecting the city as they should, or are they protecting the people that are working for the city?
well, are you
Because there's a difference.
But if you're gonna, you
if
should
you
be,
know
you
that
should be doing
employee,
both. You should be doing.
you
both.
should be. But if you know
Both.
that employee is costing you constant chaos and constant problems of lawsuits, there's where a problem lies. They should not then double down and work harder to protect whatever is causing the issues. They need to be protecting the city, because that's what we're paying them to protect, which means don't give us lawsuits that is going to cost us money. Don't open us up for that. And we can argue about votes all day long, because I know for a fact she was a liar. I know for a fact that I have her on record lying about a specific incident, and I have the document that shows that it was a lie. And for her claim that she got sick and left town for that, I have on tape and on record verification that she was working perfectly healthy and fine down south on the dates that she claimed she couldn't be here because she was sick. So I'm not even going to get into the votes, because that will just, obviously that's a whole nother 4 hours that I could go on to that. But my question about our current city attorney was this: other than the fact that simple things that I feel that should be answered, because I'm paying them with my tax dollars too. So you're accountable to me as well. Simple things that I ask to be answered, I don't get answered. Or months later, I finally get a Google search. Not what I asked for. I'm very well how to work Google. I'm not a tech person, but I can work Google, okay? Brings me into the opening of cases. So I'm going to flat out ask the questions. Let's see who's first. Well, we'll do it this way, because this will be our last bit. Troy, you're up.
You're perfect. You are perfect.
Do you believe, and I'm going to use the word believe, because I don't want to get into the antics of proving and blah, blah, blah. But do you believe that there has been any misconduct in our city hall over the last, well, you've only been here 8 years. So 8 years. I don't want to go too far back, because then you can't answer, obviously, that far back. And obviously it's going to be a belief because you're not there. Do you believe that there has been any misconduct in our city hall over the last 8 years? Why or why not? And do you feel there should be a call for a full city audit to put it all to bed? And you got 1 minute.
So I absolutely believe there's been a lot of misconduct because of two big reasons. One, I've talked to 5 separate commissioners who have, across 2 different commissions, all claimed that they've been lied to by city staff and the manager, and that it feels like that's not just a whoops, we did it once. It feels like it's been that part of a systemic issue. We've got the 2 cases, with Brandy and Patty. Those things are happening. I've looked at video that's been out there. I've talked to the news people. I've talked to many people about this. It's not just a, he said, she said. It feels very clear that these things were done without proper due process, and that is a huge red flag. So those 2 things need me to believe absolutely there's been misconduct, and I'm not sure how long back it goes, but it does feel like it's a systemic issue, because I've heard people say these issues have been going on since 2012 even. So I feel like it's absolutely been a systemic issue that needs to be fixed. And a full audit, I would have no problem with calling for. Again, we talked about how much is the audit going to cost. I think we can find the money.
And we'll
for an
touch
audit,
that here.
because I do believe we need to put all this to rest. We've got this core of people who have been consistently complaining, and if they don't go away when they get dismissed, we owe it to them to do a full investigation and figure out what's happening.
All right, thank you. And Heidi?
And I'm going to say that I'm for a full audit as well. I've indicated over and over, I don't have a problem with an audit being brought forward, whether it's in an individual department. I actually requested an audit in one or 2 departments, and I don't have a problem with that, because the transparency should be there, whether it puts it to bed. It uncovers something, or it puts it to bed. One way or the other, these things need to be done. If you're talking about misconduct, misconduct in City Hall, I'm gonna say yes, and I'm gonna say maybe for different reasons, because I've been there longer. Yes, but that's my personal interpretation. And in order for something like that to really, you're not going to know. So, I mean,
Oh, 30 seconds.
oh, what? I'm
You
sorry.
got 30 seconds.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so yes, I think over the time that I've been there, there have been things that definitely you could look at and say that were problematic. Definitely.
So,
What would stop you from calling for an audit?
well, that's what I'm saying. So, talking about the audit,
Or taking something extra action step.
Well, I can tell you that some of the specific things that I'm talking about were specifically not recent now.
well, right.
That I can tell you. And
But let me ask you this: the
It would have to be a
FDLE
forensic
has
audit.
said that it doesn't have to be current issues; they're looking at it as a whole. And so, when Anita made that motion, the question keeps coming up: is if you felt that there was anything, why didn't you just second it and let it die at votes? So why not just second it?
Anita made the motion after she stated she had already called FDLE and had the investigation, which I believe was before the commission meeting, give or take August 2nd or 3rd.
Mhm.
She already had that in place. She already made a statement that she did not ask us. The motion was not, will you second a motion to do this investigation? The motion, she stated, I have already called. That is already in play. Do I support that? If that's what a commissioner wants to do, go ahead and do it. Again, open it up, put it to bed, right, wrong,
Would
let's
you
have some
sit with Ted at
clarification.
the FDLE and tell him your concerns from previous?
Absolutely.
And so
But if the
then,
motion was to suspend the city manager, who is kind of the linchpin to all these things happening, I think that was perhaps the most gracious way to move forward. To say, okay, we're going to stop.
we're not going
Put
to
a
fire.
pause. We're
Right.
just going to put a pause on this. Get the investigation started and put this person aside that seems to be the instigator
And
of all
essentially,
this.
that is enacting the policy and procedure of fraud. That's all it is. She just didn't do it on the commission like, in my opinion, it should have been done. That's my opinion. She chose instead to take the route of going to them herself and talking to them, which fine and dandy as well. But I see it as only enacting what we already have in play. Is, listen, we're tired of hearing that this is going on. Let's put it to rest and enact this policy, which didn't happen. But so I get your second was because it wasn't so much a second to do an investigation, but
She had already stated that she was
had
doing
started
that.
it. But
she wanted to suspend the manager, which I think personally would have been a good, at least again, second it just to have the conversation, just to put it out there to say, okay, let's talk this through. Vote for it, don't vote for it as another decision, but to at least give her the courtesy to say we're going to have this conversation.
So now though, but I've been told, and like you said, we've been told from Anita that she did already ask for the investigation. So if you're on board with getting the investigation, have you reached out to them and saying, listen, I'm all for it too. I may not have nothing to add, or you may have something to add, but I'm for it too. I think you guys should just come in, put this all to rest, make sure everything is running legitly.
I
Because
believe they're already looking into it. I believe that they have already made contact and they have an assigned investigator to it. So they're already on it. And if they want to contact anyone, I would imagine that they would. And if as time goes on in the investigation when we're not contacted, and I'll give them a month, I'll ask, and then I will go ahead and say, listen, if you want to talk to me, I'm here. I will definitely have a conversation, because if you're going to do a thorough investigation, you would think you would talk to the commission.
Right.
But again, that's not my realm of expertise, how they conduct that.
right.
So
So I guess that puts to rest the whole second motion thing. But in terms of the audit itself, you also have the ability to say, hey, state, before my name gets put as mayor, I don't want to come in there with all this on my head, hanging over my head. I want a clean slate. So the question obviously is to you too. In going in, is that going to be something that you feel is a necessity to do right off the bat, to say, listen, let's stop, get this dealt with, regain that trust? Because again, we're not moving nowhere until that trust gets restored.
I think the audit is the critical linchpin to start, because we've got to get past this nastiness that's not going to go away, and that's the only way.
I'm not going away.
So to shut Brandy up.
Yes.
I think we do need to have that audit. We have to put it out there and say, you know what, folks, you are presenting these issues. We hear you. We're going to do
And
this
that's-
thing.
can I just
And
clarify?
that's the policy.
Are you talking about the water audit?
No,
At this point, the
full
whole
city
city.
audit.
Okay.
What it's
Which
considered
would be
is a
inclusive of-
performance, operational, financial, information technology systems. That's a full city audit. And I understand we do some audits, but what we do are not legit audits. They're legit in a sense, as in, does this number meet this number? That's an audit. I've done those all day long. They're very simple. You know what we want to know is more the operational and the performance on top of the financial of, yeah, it says this, but did it cost that? And why did it cost that? That's what these audits will tell us. Are we doing our best? Are we putting funds where funds are supposed to go? Are we misappropriating funds? Are we mismanaging funds? That's what this is going to tell us. This is going to come in and say, listen, they're doing a great job. Sorry, it looked and perceived to be a little shady. Hiding records doesn't help, but we don't find anything wrong. Or they're going to come in and say, fix this, fix that, fix this, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, if you have a full
but either way, it's done.
External audit that clears everything out, no matter how many people still want to, bitch and moan about the problems that we're seeing, if that audit has been done and it says, hey, we're all set,
I bow down.
As a citizen, as a commission can
I will bow down.
Here's the information.
Right at the podium.
There it is.
I will. So I apologize all day long, but I'm telling you, I've seen the records. I've seen the evidence. It exists. That's why I push so hard, is because I can't undo what I saw. If I could, pray to God I would, because this is way more than I ever wanted to be involved. I had a life at one point. I was very happy. I played cards on Wednesday nights and kicked some ass on cards. I don't have that anymore. I am literally eating, sleeping, dreaming, walking, talking city nonsense. So I would love to not ever have to do that. It won't happen because, again, I saw what I have seen. And if I didn't see it, I would never come forward with the accusation it exists, because who's that going to look on? When it comes out, it doesn't. But I'm telling you, it exists. And so that is my biggest concern. And with wrapping this up, I guess, real quickly is, well, there is one question. Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, because I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't know if it's something that you can answer. You know?
So then can I just ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at doing an audit, you're looking at a complete financial audit.
It's a performance and an operational, financial, and technology audit.
Right. Not just how much did it cost, but
right.
Why did it cost that much?
Right. So we want to see, are the departments operating the way they should? So they'll look at each department as individuals as well. And then they're going to go into and say, well, this hammer says it cost $5. Should it have cost $5? Did we actually pay $5? And what is the basis of that part? So they look at, these are the type of audits I do. Okay. So you're going to look at everything and then as a whole and say, is everything running by law the way it should be legitly?
Okay, let's say you do that. Let's say you discover the hammer was, we paid $5, we should have paid $3. Okay, you're looking at that. What does that do for the perception of not following or not having standard operating policies, procedures, retaliation? What does your clarification of that type of an audit, because you're still going to have those issues?
No. What it does is it creates the perception that we as a city are doing something to fix what we know is a problem. It creates a perception of we care enough to know what my dirty laundry looks like and what it smells like, and we're going to fix it. And it's, if we can identify, if there's a pattern, okay, 2 years ago we paid more for a hammer than we should have. Okay, it's a fluke. It happens, right? If we pay every year way more than we should have for anything, it's a pattern. Someone's getting fired. Right? I mean, it has to come down to that.
There has to be accountability.
If these things become patterns, someone's getting fired. Someone's butt is on the line for this. And it has to go all the way to the top of the pile and say, this person should have recognized what was happening, should have prevented it from happening, and they haven't done their job. They need to be moved on. And it like I said, the perception it's going to create is the openness, the transparency, the trust that I think so many people so desperately want right now, to say they're willing to open up their doors, have it looked at. Good, bad, ugly, as you mentioned before. We know there will be problems. No one expects the city to be 100% perfect. That's not going to happen. And it's not that we're going after that one hammer you paid too much for. It's those patterns. It's those continuous things that keep happening that we need to understand how to fix.
But I understand that entire concept, and I don't disagree with it at all. How does that fix the internal or external workings of each department where you maybe don't have policies and procedures in
Well, it
place.
creates those. When you get an audit back that says you have consistently had these problems in these departments, the first thing you do is you bring in an external person that says, okay, we are going to create these policies. We take the audit. Some audits may even be able to provide you with, this is what you could do to fix these things, but you have to commit to, taking the audit and taking the action, right? So when that comes back, you come back and you say, we're going to have an interim manager that's going to present better policies, better procedures that we're going to start to implement. You have to make the changes. Again, you're right. It's not just we have an organized day go on.
Yeah, and that's my point.
Yeah.
You can do, if I had an efficiency study from 2008 that was given to me. When I looked at that efficiency study, the problems presented in 2008 are 10 years later
Still
the
there.
Same problems.
And that's
10
terribly.
years.
And it shouldn't be.
And it's
Because
in
we just
so
paid to find
many
out what the
diff-
problem was. We should have implemented a solution.
Right.
But again, the will has to be there to implement that solution.
Not when the state comes in. You have to implement
They will appoint
solutions.
someone to take
Right.
over.
But
They will shut down our government and run it for us.
I understand that, and that is in. But that doesn't say if your policy is that we are going to mow the lawns every Wednesday at from 7 to 9.
We should have a policy that would break laws. So that can't be a policy. We're not going to find that it's a policy issue because policies don't break the laws. You see what I'm
But
saying?
you have to have
people break the laws.
But you have to have policies in order. You have to have policies and standard operating procedures so that people know what the
and the
parameters
problem is
are.
they're
But those
not
get
being
thrown out.
followed
They're-
then.
if
Because
they're
if the
not being
parameters would open you up to this type of issue, then those parameters were wrong from the get-go and they would force you to fix those parameters. That's why
It
it's
would
so
be the
important to
catalyst
have a
for change.
state come in and do it, not somebody we willy-nilly pay off of the street. It's got to be a very specific audit.
A full
Otherwise, it's
external.
not going to fix, like you said, it's not going to
Completely
fix the
independent.
problem.
And that's the thing. You have to, when you do something like that and your numbers come clean or they come out, there has to be, the change has to be affected. It has to be.
Yes.
Because
And I look at it.
otherwise your studies and your audits, if you listen to them and yay, it's good now, and another issue arises a year later, you have to be willing to implement what is brought forth.
Right.
That's
And
exactly.
that's
The
issue.
state won't allow you not to. The state will say you have to implement this change because you are doing it illegally or wrong. Or this is too big of a loophole. You have so-and-so that we just fired stealing your money.
Right.
You need to fix this.
Yes.
And they'll tell you, fix this, fix this, fix this, fix that. Me, I looked at it like this when it came to an audit. I was asked to run for mayor, for district, for anything. And I said, hell no. And there's a lot of reasons for that, none more so than it would bind my hands. But what I did think of at one point was if I had to run, if I was given no other choice because God forbid we just had the shit luck of who to pick from, and I had to run, I thought the first thing I would have to do is call for an audit. Because I would be damned if I sit up there with my name up there and then all this history comes rolling down under my name. You know what I'm saying? I would want to go in there and say, listen, I want to start with a clean slate. I want to restore the trust. I want to say nothing's going on in here. Put that to rest. Call it a day. And now let's move forward under a new commission, under a new mayor, under new direction. And let's really bring that city forward. We're not going to move forward until we can trust. And we don't trust for
Absolutely.
obvious reasons. I mean,
Absolutely.
I
I
could
agree.
pages of reasons why we don't trust. And it's sad because going into this, I trusted. Totally trusted. My
Didn't
first
we all?
conversation with the mayor is I have respect for you. I don't deny it. I said it until I started pulling documents and saw the things I saw. And then I had to go up to him and say, you're my biggest disappointment. And that's horrible. I should not be saying that somebody that I got into this with, now you're my biggest disappointment. I mean, he's been here forever. He's the founder of getting us into a city. So as I look at it as if I was him, I would be like, ain't no way you're going to muddy my name. Let's clear this shit up. And when it didn't happen, it told me all I needed to know. And so as the documents came in, I said, now I see.
Absolutely.
Shine those lights, right? You know, hallelujah. But I know we're over, so I don't want to take anybody else's time. But obviously these are a lot of the issues, you know, that we've been kind of coming into play with and facing with our city. And we just really want to know, like, and for candidates to know, this is what we are going to expect if we want it to be different than it has been the last, and I'll only say 2 years because that's the only time I've been involved. But if we don't want it to keep the way it's been going for 2 years and steadily getting worse and increasing, we got to stop it. We got to nip it. We got to fix it. And we need people who are going to say, we understand, we can implement these changes.
And I think we need people like you. So thank you for, I think, that's for you, but no, we do. And I appreciate, I love hearing, questions I've never thought of before.
Right, right.
Like you said, you didn't have any idea that was a problem someone had. And
right.
if people don't ask the questions, we'll never know what the problem is. So, I appreciate the time that you take into this as well.
And Brandy, you made a comment in the beginning, you're just like a nobody. And I disagree with that because I don't think anybody's a nobody. I think that everybody brings something to the table, even if you learn something from everybody, even if you learn what not to do. Because sometimes learning what not to do is just as important as learning what to do and learning what people say and what they feel. And I think that you can't close yourself off at all. And I don't think, I think you've brought a lot of things forward, and I think that you're a very smart person and that you analyze everything. So don't ever say that you're just little me and I'm a nobody, because I disagree with that.
Well,
I disagree.
So I just want to thank you guys again. I know we went over our time and all that, but
But it was fun.
I like this, and I think if
You should consider doing a real talk radio show.
There you go. A podcast.
in all my free time, I don't know. I mean, let's see. I don't think I've slept in 2 days, so I'm surprised we're still here.
We have one tomorrow night too. Well, not
Oh, yeah.
but
Well, yeah, but that meeting,
gathering
the
tomorrow
gathering.
night.
I
So,
think there's a couple things tomorrow night, no? I don't know.
probably.
I think there's some other meeting too at the center. Oh, no, that was canceled. The News Journal canceled that, didn't
Oh,
they?
right, because
Frat
right,
Lowry
right,
got
yeah.
sick.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
his
that's
dad was
right.
sick.
Yeah.
So, just want to thank everybody that kind of stuck with us and tuned in, and I hope that you got some information and some better insight on our candidates and as people, and not the
Scary or not?
well, and see. The reason I say it like that and why I do mine a little different is because I am just that average normal person that's out there. So when I go to these debates and whatever, I mean, the whole thing running through my head is like, but they're not acting themselves. They're not genuine. Even though the answers may seem genuine, it's just like, that's not you. It's not your personality. And I wanted this. I want everybody to see that we can laugh, we can crack up, we can make jokes. We can get along.
We can get weird phone calls.
Yeah.
Where
We're
people
still
are
there.
listening.
I wonder who it is. Oh, they've just been there the whole
One
time.
of Jamie's
So-
clients.
That's right.
So,
He's not anymore.
just want to thank everybody again, and again, for taking the time out, because I know each one of you guys had to reschedule some things, and you had to
That's all
reschedule clients, and so I really wanted to put out that appreciation for you coming out here, and all the way here too,
That's
it.
good. I'll
We're good.
stop at Starbucks on the way home.
That's right. I'm like, if we got now, they'll still be open.
Oh yeah, we gotta get out of here.
all right, guys, I'm out of here.